Hello. Wait, where's the... Oh, I'm not in Discord. That's why there's no Discord overlay. Pardon me? There we go. Now you should be able to see it. Haha. Hello and good evening. Well, good evening for me. Might not be for you. Probably not. Yeah, Oh, wait. I'll be right back. There we go. Sorry. So yeah, today is community hours with Baard, but Baard is not here yet because he's has to do important things. He'll be here in like 25 minutes. Until then, we'll do some regular Q&A. I am TH Pine, if you're not aware, community manager for Due Process, and this is community hours, so a weekly Q&A stream. So feel free to ask anything. Probably not a lot of people in the stream right now, because I did not ping on purpose, because I want to ping when Baard is actually here. I should probably prepare that announcement. Alright, stream announcements. If you have any questions, it's probably not like, who's here? Derby, Luz, Grant, not too many. So I hope you have a good day. We're just gonna pass the time a little bit because I want these streams to start on schedule if possible, because consistency, which is good for streams, I've heard. So yeah, as I said, I hope you all have a good day. I'm just preparing the announcement when he's coming. When is customization coming? What will it be exactly? Like, okay, let me go to the list of questions I'm gonna ask Baard. Those are questions that have been sent in from the community. I'm just gonna read you the first one. When will we get character customization? The second one is about how detailed it will be. So I'm not gonna answer that now because Baard will be better at answering that than me. So just wait for like 23 minutes from now, hopefully. Nothing goes wrong. He's in a meeting. He should be done. The meeting should be done in 20 minutes, really. It might go over time, but it's unlikely. So creative director. Yeah, as I said, I just want to pass the time a little bit. Want to start these streams on schedule for consistency reasons. Crabs, yeah, sure, crabs. So besides playing Due Process, I found another game I find really entertaining recently. Well, a few days ago, which is a Slapshot Rebound. It's a arcadey ice hockey game. It's really funny. It's really fun, actually. I really enjoy it. I'm really bad at it, but I enjoy it. I don't know if any of you played that. Also, what's your favorite tile set in Due Process? Let me know. I want to see, like, I don't know what the... I mean, we don't have many people here, I guess. but still, I want to gauge interest. Like, who likes, like, I don't know. I personally like C-Star, but I know that most people actually don't, so I'm curious. But I think we don't have enough people in chat actually right now. You're all waiting for Baard. I understand that. You're not here for me. Also, I didn't ping, so. Fun fact, I just learned, today I learned, well, multiple things actually. First, the shapes you have in Tetris, and this is related to the process, by the way, because we talked about this internally because of level generation stuff. So the shapes you have in Tetris are called tetrominos. And there are a special form of polyominoes. So polyomino is basically a mix of polygon and domino, I guess? Well, I don't know, like polygon and mino or something. I don't know. So they're called polyominoes, which are like shapes of squares with a random number or whatever number of of squares. If they have exactly 4 shapes, they're called tetrominos, because tetra is 4, right? And so yeah, I learned that today. And on top of that, I realized, wait, that's also why dominoes are called dominoes, because that's when they have exactly 2 squares. Mind blown. Like, I never knew. Like, that's crazy. So Tetris is called Tetris because it uses tetrominos. And domino is called domino, or dominoes, don't call dominoes, I guess, because they have 2 squares. Who knew? And I never, oh, by the way, the other thing I just never realized is that all Tetris shapes have 4 squares. I wasn't aware of that. Like, now that I think about it, yeah, sure. But I never realized that's a thing. I always thought it's just like a bunch of random shapes. But no, they all have 4 squares, exactly. My mind was blown multiple times in a row. It was crazy. So yeah, polyominoes apparently. Factory for outside peaks. Well, I don't like outside peaks, so but I see where you're coming from. I love the discoveration of Kill House when it's that kind of work. You mean Clubhouse? It will not come back exactly like that. We learned. It was an experiment. We learned a lot of it. We learned a lot from it. Those lessons have been applied and will be applied in level generation, and also it might come back in a revised version in some form, or parts of it will be reused in other levels or tile sets. So we will see. Is club okay? That's the same question basically. Also, yeah, we have ideas for other multi-floor tile sets. It's just a little tricky with our current drawing tools or planning tools, because we did a proper multi-floor tile set test in the alpha phase. So we had a prototype tile set that actually had 2 floors, and it was fun, but it was a freaking mess because it was way too complicated. Like, you have to realize you have 90 seconds or a little more, I think. What's the planning phase right now? I don't know. So you have less than 2 minutes to understand the map and make a plan and grab your gear. That means the map needs to be easy to read, and that's hard for 2-floor maps. Now people usually suggest, oh, you can have a button to switch between floors. Yeah, we had that. It's still hard. It's still really hard to understand a 3D view from like a 3D building from a 2D view. It's hard. We have some ideas how to make that easier, or we'll just come back with a more simpler 2-floor tile set that's not as hard to understand, like has fewer rooms or more strict rules, stuff like that. So yeah, we definitely want more verticality as well. We'll get there. Outside peaks are fun when you're doing it. Yeah, I guess. Wait, why is the YouTube title wrong again? Okay, Restream is just doesn't like me. It does it? Is that correct? Is that... Why is it doing that? I don't understand why it's doing that. It was definitely set up to the correct event. I don't know why it... Okay, I'll double check for the next stream right before, but I definitely set it correctly. Well, I can just fix this one. Oh, I don't have to. Okay. That's annoying. That's a restream bug, I feel. Last time I thought I just forgot to press save or whatever, but this time I definitely did. So that's very annoying. It's fine. We'll make do. I mean, since Baard is not here yet, I have time to fix this. So yeah, I'll just fix that really quick. If you have any questions, you know the drill. But I know you're all just waiting for Baard for the most part, which is fair. That's fine. That's fine. As much as I like to be the most important person in the room, I don't always have to be. Don't always have to be it. Mackie says, please fix the MAWP bugs for Weapon Field 2.0. I actually don't know if that's... We might? I'm not quite sure. Actually, what are the... I know there are a few bugs. I forgot again. I'm not a big MAWP user. I know there are. Like, I read about them recently. I'm not sure if they are being fixed, actually. But, like... Basically, tell Vince is the answer to that. Pester him about it, and he'll probably fix them. Oh, accidental reload. Yeah, that was one of them, right? I remember now. So, okay. I hope the YouTube stream is now correct. Let me see how it looks from... Now it didn't update the thumbnail. Thank you, YouTube. Thank you very much. Wait, it did. What? Why is it not showing when I'm... There we go. Now, special guest creative director Baard. I should probably rename that to Alexander Baard. Yeah, those bugs got introduced. Oh, Alexander Baard is too long for the title. We just give it Baard, I guess. Can I do it on Twitch? Yeah, Twitch titles can be longer. Good to know. It's been in since beginning of Refactor and it kills herds. Yeah, I know. Those issues have been introduced with the Refactor and never got ironed out, unfortunately. Shield when? Well, not gonna say, you know who to ask that. It's not me. But I'm pretty sure the answer will be soon. I mean, it's on the roadmap to give an official answer. You can look it up, but you know that already. MAWP best shotgun? I mean, if you're an attacker, yeah, I agree. Okay, so yeah, as I said, if you have any questions, we'll need to pass the time until Baard is available. What is the top priority for the game right now? Well, one of the top priorities, well, we have multiple, but one of them is performance optimization. Another one is improve, like, get people to the core fun of the game, which means, like, make them communicate. Because the game is only fun if you communicate with the teammates in some way or form. I hope we get a reflex sight and a laser for the MAWP. Whew! Maybe with weapon economy sometime in the future. C4 asks... Wait, are you... Aren't you usually called C3? Am I making stuff up, or is your Twitch name swapped? Sorry, I cannot answer your question until I find out. Yeah, it's C3. C3, yeah. Your Twitch name is wrong. That's very confusing. So C43A asks, how come shield card are so far on the roadmap? They always seemed like a core part of the gameplay. They are... Yeah, I mean... It would be nice to have back, and we'll get them back. And they will improve gameplay. But they're not gonna bring in many users, they're not gonna increase retention. They're gonna make the game better in the long run, but they're not a top priority right now. Every summer asks about defender economy. That's one of the questions I'll ask Baard later, so you'll be able to answer that better than me. Ballsman will win DPL, right? I'll put it this way. If Ballsman makes it into the playoffs this season, they'll win them. I'm sure. Oh, you had the other account C3, but you lost the password, so you swapped the numbers. Will Gunplay 2.0 change stats for the guns? I don't think so. As far as I know, not. If there hasn't been any recent changes, then no. It will change recoil. I'm not sure about spread. I don't think so. It will change recoil mostly for most guns. Significantly, though. We'll add recoil animations, and it changes shotgun spread and fixes shotgun bugs. Those are the main things. And like there's some adjustments to wall bangs and whatnot. Today I can actually hear the music. I'm quite happy about that. My monitor audio did not break. I did not hear the flashbang transition though. Like, it's just, I don't know. It's really weird. It's just inconsistent. I don't know why that is. It's not a big deal, but it would be it's confusing. It's bothering me. So if any of you is like super or does know why that's an issue in OBS sometimes, please reach out. Hey Donut, welcome to the stream. I hope you're doing good. So let me take a look in Discord. No, they're still... Oh, actually queuing up for playtest. So I assume Bot will be here soonish. We'll see. Will Brace still be as powerful in weapon 2.1? I assume you mean 2.0. Overall, all guns will be harder to control. That is in Brace and in... That's true for Brace and for ADS. The current situation is that there's barely any... Like, for a lot of weapons, Brace is just superior to ADS. There's barely any incentive to use ADS whatsoever. And with weapon fields 2.0, it will be way more beneficial to use ADS on some weapons. So you actually have an interesting choice to make. So in that sense, it's getting weaker, I guess. Brace fire is getting weaker, is what I'm saying. It will not be the dominant fire mode anymore. Will still be very useful, don't get me wrong. But it's not like you brace 90% of the time. You actually have to decide between Brace and ADS now, in more situations. If you're wondering, no webcam today because I have a guest. And then I usually don't do webcam except when, or I didn't do it in the past, I guess. I might do it in the future if I have a guest who does want to do webcam. Like, Baard was not super reluctant to it, but he was not super hyped about it either. So he said we'll leave the face reveal for some other time. So Hey, so about map gen, will there be different shapes besides squares, like rounded corners or triangle shapes in the map gen forums? Probably not, at least not in the foreseeable future. It just makes it way harder. Like how Axum always put it is, level gen is really good at playing Tetris, so puzzling Tetris tiles together, and if you could add irregular shapes to it, and it could do that, it could still work with them, but it would be you need a lot of irregular shapes that can fit other irregular shapes, or otherwise your buildings will look very weird. So you would need like way more shapes, base shapes, and it also, the other reason is why this is probably not coming is that it would make it harder to navigate the map, because it's easier to like understand the map in a few seconds that is only square shaped than one that has triangles and whatnot. So we'll probably stick with squares for now. Yeah, Red Commissar, who's one of our cadets, so he actually played with Gunplay 2.0 already, is basically answering the question from Matt. Brace will still be good at what it is supposed to be good at, rushing corners and short range fights. I think that's a fair assessment. It will be way more beneficial to ADS on longer range engagements though, or even mid in a lot of situations, I feel. Give circle gen, yeah, no, that would be, how would you even build shapes that like stick together, that have sort of like smaller and bigger ones, and you could stick them, or you could have like half a donut, well, a quarter of a donut, and then stick them together and have like different layers, but probably possible, probably a mess and a lot of work for not much gain. Moonbase, yeah, basically that's what I was thinking. I think you mean what I'm thinking with Moonbase. Oh, no, wait, you mean something else, maybe. I guess you could have like a space base where you have like multiple circular rooms that are connected with tunnels. But that would just create like, I don't think that would be fun to play. I mean, except if those rooms are big and have lots of stuff in them, because otherwise it's just going to be a firefight on the choke points. 5th tile set confirmed. I mean, it is confirmed that we get a 5th tile set. It's not going to be Moonbase. Yeah, no more brace fire across entire factory floor. That's probably not something you want to do at the next update. Which, at this point, I would say probably not coming this week anymore, because we tend to not release gameplay updates towards the end of the week, because we don't want to risk some issues. Okay, Baard is ready, so I'll just gonna pump out the announcement and then drag him in. Hello, hello.
Hi, can you hear me okay?
I can hear you, and the stream should be able to hear you as well.
Hello, stream.
So yeah, welcome.
Welcome.
Well, so I
just
already
you to your own stream.
yeah, I guess. Yeah.
So what's going on?
So yeah, what's going on? I just passed the last 30 minutes with a few questions from chat, and now we should have a bunch of people coming in because I just pinged the server. So hello everyone again, I guess. I'm still TH Pine, and I'm here with our creative director Alexander Baard, and we'll go through some questions that have been sent in over the past weekend. How are you doing, Baard?
Doing okay. Another day, another dollar. You know?
That's how it goes. I think you're actually a little quieter than earlier, so I'm just gonna bump you up a little bit.
Okay.
No, this is not pre-recorded, as chat is suggesting, but the questions are prepared. So I filtered out the really bad ones. There were a few very, very, very bad ones. Okay.
I'm sure there's some colorful questions for sure.
Yeah. Okay. I guess we just get started. What do you think?
Okay, sounds good.
Sure. Okay. Well, we'll get it. We're gonna start with a question that has been asked for months now, a lot of times. So I'll just put it at the start of this this session, and it is: when will we get character customization?
Soon.
That's a good answer.
I mean, it's not being worked on right now, and it's just because there's so many issues with the game that are more important to solve. However, you know, we obviously see the value in, first of all, I guess just creating a grind, since that seems to be convention in so many other games, to keep people feel like they're earning something for their time played. But then too, of course, just for the actual fun of character customization and being able to delineate your character from others rather than it just being some random skin assigned to you. We're looking forward to doing it, and as you guys have seen from some captures of the spectators, there are a lot of configurations possible. We're just gonna have to give a more firm answer on exactly how character customization works and when it will release when we're closer to doing that, you know. So it is on the docket. It's just going to be a while because there are other things like, you know, for instance, you can't even first person spectate in this game right now, right? Just obvious things that need to be done between here and there. The other thing I'd just like to point out is, you know, it does, like, whenever you see like a free to play game or just any game that has these character customization pipelines and the like battle passes and that kind of stuff done, that probably took like a couple of man years to do, you know, like beyond just all of the content required to make one of those things actually work. There's considerable design and engineering time required to do it. And, you know, we're not a big team. We're like 20 guys, you know, so it's going to be a little bit.
And
but
20 guys includes like 20 guys includes everyone. So that's the engineers, the art team, but also me and PR and level designers and everything.
Yeah. And so it's, again, it is high priority, but so is everything else, unfortunately. So
that's a good way to put it. So yeah, you kind of touched on it already, but the next question would be: how detailed will we be able to customize our characters? Will it be full skin sets, or will we be able to mix and match? Maybe even add things like holsters or bandoliers to change how equipment rests on your character. Is that something?
I mean, way back in the day, I actually had us do like a holster and load bearing gear pass. But we kind of ended up just canning the idea for the time being. If you look at all the mags and stuff on the player characters, right, it's obvious that we still want to do that because we didn't just go through all this trouble to put mags on you and then there's just nothing holding them. That's stupid, right? Yeah, it just it wasn't the biggest priority, obviously, and you know, it's something I'd like to do in the future. It's just more that we had to make a lot of cuts to the character customization system based on feasibility and how much time it would take to create. And I'd like us to revisit some of the decisions that we made and see, you know, what actually isn't wise to do and what is actually worth it, you know, because I think there's, don't necessarily agree with the decisions that were made. So we'll see. It's just like, it's very much in flux, and as soon as we have something nailed down and we're ready to show it, I think it's going to be really, really cool. You know, we just got to figure out exactly what we're doing with it.
I mean, I remember V-Man posting some sneak previews recently in Discord with a few character designs. So
yeah, and you know, like
cool.
the design parts are like easy, right? Like
yeah, sure.
shipping a character that looks cool. Like some of the models that you guys saw, I think took us maybe believe it was 2 weeks, with 1 week actually doing the model itself, and then the second week doing the skinning and implementation of it. Like, so we're eager to do that kind of stuff. I'm talking more about like the more substantial questions, like, well, are there holsters? Where does the ammo go? That kind of stuff.
Yeah, I can see that. So the other question, I assume we're probably gonna get to be decided here from you, but I'll have to ask anyway. How will we obtain cosmetics? Unlock via progression, buy via microtransaction, or loot boxes, or something completely different?
Well, my understanding with the loot boxes is they seem to be going out because of the whole legal realities of them.
Yeah, that's true.
And how do I put this? Like, hey, microtrans and that kind of stuff are an important revenue stream, right? And if we want to make the game better, we need a larger dev team to do that, right? And the way to get that is to increase the take of the project, to speak in plain terms, right? Personally, I fucking hate all that shit. I hate
That's
like
good to hear.
content treadmills. I hate like, I don't mind paying for a skin, like, whatever. If I really like the skin, I guess I'd do that. I just typically unmoved to purchase any kind of cosmetic thing. I think the only game that I've actually spent cosmetic money on was Rising Storm Vietnam, and I did so just because I wanted to support them. But yeah, it's like, I really don't know what path it'll take. All I can really say is, I can have an aesthetic, I don't know how to put it, a bias against, like, I just hate that games have become about grinding for cosmetics, and that's why people play. But at the same time, it seems like, based on our concurrency and based on the reality of every other competing product in the world, it seems like if you don't play that game, you're gonna lose. And so I don't know. I mean, we'll revisit it. Like I said, we don't have any immediate plans for this right now. It's going to be months and months and months before we have anything. It's just, honestly, these are just more my candid personal feelings on how those things go. I do want people to feel like they're getting something from playing the game, but like, in a perfect world, that would be like, you're getting better at the game. I don't know, like, I guess I'm just kind of a purist, is what I'm saying.
Yeah, I feel you. Like, it would be nice if people would just play games like for fun, but I understand that's not the reality of things.
The reality is, you've got basically, like, I don't know how much the game industry makes. Probably, I don't know, maybe close to $1 trillion worldwide or something, right? Who knows? It's just,
sounds about right.
All of that effort has gone into engineering engagement, right? And the problem with engineering and engagement is, if you're doing it for business reasons, you may not come upon the most wholesome solutions to do that, right? So, again, I'm not saying that, like, we're above anything, right? But I am saying that, like, personally, I honestly hate certain aspects of what gaming has become. I think it's bad, so. But yeah, like I said, I mean, I think it's whatever we ship when it comes to character customization and that kind of stuff probably won't be that elaborate. I think it's going to be pretty simple, And at the end of the day, it's not like we're going to charge you for guns or anything, and that really is what matters,
Speaking of guns, what about other customizations, like gun customization?
So, like, I don't know what they mean by gun customization, because if it's like
gun skins.
Okay, so yeah, just like cosmetic. Yeah, I mean, for the defenders, it makes a lot of sense, right? Like, that it's like they have their own stuff and they don't really have like any kind of SOPs or anything, right? So
yeah,
Yeah, I'm not wild about the enforcers having pink guns, but again, it's like this is like one of those things where it's like right now I can say, yeah, no way, we're not doing pink guns out the gate for the enforcers, right? But like, what about 7 years down the line? Because it seems like every game always trends toward this outcome where it's like there's this essential corruption of the art style, right? Where and it's because if you offer people if you look at the Valve talk, right, about gun customization in CS:GO, it was I probably have multiple ones, but I was watching one I think in like 2018 or so, or maybe 2017, of the Steam Dev Days here in Seattle, and they're just talking about the inventory integration, right? But what this guy communicated was this sort of event that happened with Counter-Strike where one of the artists proposed, a pink skin for like one of the guns, right? And there's this big schism in Valve of basically, we can't do this. This is bad, right? And then the other half was like, well, I mean, sort of like a very free market argument, right? Of, well, if people are willing to pay for it, then how can we be the arbiters of taste, right? And so, of course, what they did was they allowed people to vote with their money, and the pink skin pulled in an order of magnitude more value, right? Like it commanded an order of magnitude of probably 2 more than, say, like basically people were willing to pay 25 cents for the green camo pattern on the gun, and they were willing to pay like, I don't know, like $1.25 or something, or more than that for the pink skin, probably $10, and it's more just like, gosh, I wish we had better taste, like anyway.
Yeah, that's a good way to put it, I feel.
Like, it's not a problem with the studios, right? Like, we know how to make stuff that looks good. It's just people don't want to buy stuff that looks good. They want to buy stuff that's loud, Yeah. On the other hand, right, like for the defenders, right, like, if you want to run around in like a yellow jumpsuit, like, cool, that fits their style perfectly. I like that a lot, and I'd like to keep this sort of dimorphism between those two factions where the defenders are loud and have a lot of bright colors and kind of the stuff that people would typically gravitate toward. But then the enforcers are a bit more rigid in their style and more tactical, So, I think that much will be preserved, like, no problem, We'll see about the gun skins for the enforcers. It's just, it just seems like if you commit to customization, you end up at pink guns inevitably, right?
Yeah.
So, if you had a pink NAC 11, it just makes sense, right? It's like bling, right? But
yeah,
it just.
But a pink AP25
I find
would
it
be
personally upsetting that an AP25 would be pink. That's all. If the defenders got a hold of it, right, maybe then it would become a pink AP25. That would make sense.
They paint it, yeah.
The auto spray. I don't even know what the mechanism would be. Like, why is it that when you pick up a gun, it just changes color? Like, yeah, we'll talk about that later.
It's all augmented reality.
Yeah, it could be that it's just some kind of skin, but whatever. Yeah. Anyway, let's move on.
Yeah, sure. So let's go. Well, let's actually pick one of the lighthearted question and then go back to a more serious topic again. Let's not go with I have a few joke questions, but we'll not quite go there yet. Let's go with this one.
Joke question. All right, what's up?
How did you find a dev team with such exquisite taste in games and film?
That's interesting. Meaning, I guess I can't really ask this person for clarification, but
no,
maybe they're talking about like the Ingmar is named after, of course, Ingmar Bergman.
Yeah, I mean, there were a bunch of questions in Discord. Like frequently, people ask what are your favorite movies and games and whatnot. What are inspirations for the game? And I assume the answers from that is where this question is.
The theme for the game was quite simple, right? Like, back in the day, it was like when I was at school, I went to a place called DigiPen, which is in the Pacific Northwest. It's like a game college, right? Yeah, I was like talking over with Vince about how, you know, there needs to be a tactical game that actually focuses on the tactical aspect and doesn't just have like M4s and shit in it, right? Like you actually have to behave like a SWAT team, right? And that of course grew into Due Process, right? But at the time it was like Judge Dredd, the remake Dredd 2013 or whatever came out. And
yeah.
you know, it's like a cool world, right? I actually hadn't seen 1995 Dredd yet, and of course never read any of the 2000 AD comics or anything, but you know, I was familiar as anyone else with who Judge Dredd was, right? But what I liked about it was it's like, oh well, this kind of gets around all of the, like, if you have, like, you can see this sort of Ready or Not game struggling with this dilemma, which is like, what do you do about the fact that not all of being a SWAT team is just killing people, right? Like you have to like subdue less lethally or arrest and that kind of stuff, right? And in Dread, it doesn't seem like any of those are concerns. You just shoot people and that's the end of it, right?
Yeah.
And knowing how players operate in any type of game like this, right? Like all, you know, a pair of zip ties really becomes an elaborate pair of torture devices, right? Like that's, so in order to just kind of like skip all of that dilemma and that kind of stuff, we're like, oh, so it should be like Judge Dredd or RoboCop or something, right? And that's how we ended up here. And really, you know, what happened is both Valdis and Jesse came on, and Valdis in particular really loves all these kind of pulpy things. You know, basically the three of us have watched quite a few films in our day, and I don't know, I think what it is honestly anyone who has like interest in film, when they talk about it with other people, they kind of connect because, you know, it's not just movies to them, right? Yeah. So yeah, it was like the theme and the setting, right, was just picked out of like, if we do this, it means that we can avoid a whole class of problems, right? And beyond like even say like the ethical stuff of like, well, you know, should you be allowed to execute someone that you've restrained or whatever, right? Like, which that's its own bother, right? But just like, if you have a fucking pepper ball paintball gun, right?
Yeah.
What do you do with it? Because, you know, like if you shoot someone who's like all geared up and everything with that, right? They're not really, like, pepper spray's bad, right? But it's not like I'm going to stop shooting you in the face bad, right? It's just like, this is very annoying, right? But like you see like in SWAT 4, right? You had this huge problem where all the less lethal guns and all that gear was just way more powerful an option than actual bullets. And so people just abuse all the tasers and the pepper ball guns, and it's just fucking disaster, you know? Like I don't know why anyone thought that was good beyond just like the laughs, right? But in like making like a serious tactical game like Due Process, where there are actual predictable outcomes, right? Like you can't have that with all the less lethal stuff, you know? And it's not like we're against doing less lethal stuff. It's just we wouldn't buy it. We wouldn't do it for like we wouldn't try to balance it to actually be effective, right? Like, you know, if there was, say, like a taser, would just be not a great option, right?
Yeah.
If
it just doesn't make much sense.
Would not rely on this, right? Yeah. So, you know,
why would you try to tase someone when you can just shoot them?
Right. You know.
Yeah.
And as all the special forces guys say, you have a gun, you're dead. You know, like that's the end of it.
Yeah. True. Okay. So a little bit more of a general question. So make with that whatever you want.
Okay.
How do you plan to make Due Process a success in the crowded FPS market? Like, how do we differentiate that game? How do we make sure people actually find it?
I like to point something out, right? Like, you know, as far as game launches go, right? It's no secret to anyone who's like looked at this game that the launch wasn't the best in the world, right? But on the other hand, that launch would have killed any other FPS, and we're still around.
Yeah.
So, like, gosh, can you imagine something like Lawbreakers releasing with those numbers, right? They would have been dead far faster. Right?
I mean, they were dead pretty fast. So
well, but I mean, like, it would have been like a light just went out, right?
Yeah, that's true.
And so, honestly, like, to answer that question, right, is I think how do I put this, from a sales perspective, right? We're okay. We're not making a lot of money, but we're breaking even, right? So that's good. As long as we're in the game and surviving, there's a chance to improve, right? And I think our strategy is essentially the cockroach strategy, which is simply make a game that can't die, right? And then build off of that, you know.
Eventually it will grow.
Yeah, because, like, I think the only thing that can really kill this game beyond, like, say, general, say, mismanagement on Giant Meat Crab's part, right? We're just like, because it's like treading water, right? Like, that's really how this game is played. You're trying to keep above dying, right? And then if you don't, then you die, right? So beyond that, right, the only thing that could possibly kill us is if a competing product with a similar draw was released. And frankly, I just don't think that's really likely. The closest thing we had was that Bangladeshi game that came out that also had planning, right? But we've had to sink so much. Like, planning is not just map drawing, you know. It's way more intense of a design challenge to get people to actually do what you do in this game than not to sound like egotistical or anything, but it's like it's basically like saying, oh, well, I can make a smartphone, so I can make something as good as the Apple iPhone. Like, no, like, there's a lot more subtlety there, right?
I mean, it's not enough to give people the tools for planning. You also have to incentivize planning by game design.
And what I'm saying is, like, that design part is somewhat ephemeral and it's difficult, right? Like, it's a secret sauce. And so where I'm coming from is, it's like, well, an indie studio like us, right, could probably do it because they have the agility to clone us, right? But then if they're an indie studio like us, they probably have never made a fucking real game in their life like us, and are going to go through all of the exact same problems that we do.
Why would they do better
our
than
game will have all of their troubles that they're going to encounter. Even a game like Ready or Not has clearly some development issues, and God, I don't even have to say that we've had our share of development issues. It's been 6 years making this game. That's pretty obvious, right? So then the other outcome is something AAA tries to clone this, and they just wouldn't. It's way too risky. The entire game's success is predicated on making players talk to each other, and I've never seen a AAA game actually endeavor to do that. Like, they all go in the other direction, which is, oh, well, how do we make it so you don't have to talk, right? How do you make it so you don't have to coordinate? Or how do we embrace solo play, right, is often the design challenge. So it's just not going to happen, you know. In terms of just, like, the general strategy for success, it's as straightforward as anyone else's, which is, well, you work on substantial gameplay and content improvements, right? And then you release those in conjunction with a sale, usually. And then you gain slightly more concurrency, and you just rinse and repeat the cycle over and over again. It sucks that we're starting at sub 1,000, but, you know, it is what it is. And because of that, we're prioritizing features that will make the experience more playable at lower concurrency that other games, like, they're quite obvious, but no other game just opts to take advantage of them to their own peril. So that, I don't know if that was kind of scatterbrained response, right? But
no, I think that's somewhat the answer I had in mind, like the topics you would cover when I wrote down this question.
My perspective, right, is I don't know, like, I don't know if the audience is familiar with Peter Thiel. He's like one of the founders of PayPal. He wrote this book called 0 to 1, right, which is basically about how to do startups, really, like what makes a startup successful. And basically what he's asserting is a startup is successful when something goes from 0 instances to 1. So it's like, you know, in his, like, there were search engines, right? And then there was Google, and Google was so ridiculously good in comparison that it's not even like, you can't put like Yahoo search in the same category as Google. That's just absurd, right? It doesn't return the same quality of results. Not, you know, not then, right? And certainly not now, right?
Yeah. I mean, the closest competitor right now is Bing, and the quality difference is significant.
Sure. And so it's like, but basically what he's saying, right, is your startup is going to succeed on whether or not it achieves a monopoly, right? That essentially competition is totally overrated, and the only thing that matters is getting to a monopoly in whatever it is you do. And so now, obviously, like, in the context of games, there's really no such thing as a monopoly, because any game is in competition to another game, right? I mean, like, we are in competition, right, with fucking Settlers of Catan, if you look at it that way, right? Like,
I mean, in a way, yeah, true.
Yeah, you're competing for recreational time. You know, we're not like, I don't know. My point though is, you know, if you look at it in the broadest sense, well, that's kind of naive, right? Because games give different experiences, right? Like, so my perspective, right, is that, well, games can have kind of like monopolies over some experience that they give to the player, right, that no other game can really provide, right? So kind of like a good example of this, right, is like the Apex Legends movement system, which is essentially just a graduation of the Titanfall system, right? Like, if you're really into agile play, there's probably not going to be much better games out there for you to pick, right? If you're really into movement-based shooters. In a similar lens, right? Like, yeah, okay, you can compare us to their obvious competitors, being namely Siege and Counter-Strike. Obviously, we're all in the same exact ball game, which is 5v5 tactical shooter. It's just, hey, you know, let's be real. The difference of what we're trying to achieve is substantial. Like, Counter-Strike, we could call that almost a genre into its own, and then Siege and Due Process would be graduations of that design, right?
Yeah.
But in the case of like Siege's place, like, when you're queued with other people in that game, there's no plan. You just pick your operators and you go, right? And synergies will evolve, and there's like meta things to do, like, you know, reinforce these walls or take this operator because they're a really good pick in the current meta. But it's not, no other game gives you this kind of play where you're actually coordinating with the team and you're making a plan to outplay the enemy, you know? So, you know, just honestly, what remains in question is just how much of a draw is that? Like, how valuable is that to players versus just playing a normal first-person shooter? Because I think a lot of people, from what we've seen, right, buy this game and they don't even know that there's like a planning phase. And I'm just like, how the fuck do you miss that? You know, there are a lot of people who buy this game just to play a first-person shooter.
Yeah.
And like, hey, frankly, like, as just a first-person shooter, we fucking suck. Like, Call of Duty is a way better choice. Counter-Strike is better. Like, Siege is better, and just like, hey, there's gunplay and you do things and you shoot people and you have fun, right? Like battle, any first person shooter just on that aspect is just going to do that better than our game, right? But on the other hand, like, I challenge you to play with any of the team play that we're providing. Like, there's nothing quite like this. Like, I suppose if you got into the real pro tier of Siege, like you're playing with the ESA or the R6 Pro League or whatever they have, right? Then yeah, okay, there's going to be coordination and plans, but if you're playing the same map over and over again, that's pretty limited on what you can do, you know?
Yeah. It's more like having a general strategy, I assume, and then doing in-action coordination, and not so much about planning on the fly.
Yeah, I mean, they may be hyper-specific, right, in that it's like,
sure,
because this is this meta and you have to vault like the basement of Hereford base or whatever, that these are the positions and the picks and that kind of stuff, right? But you know, it's just not like a thinking on your feet type thing like this, where it's like you're just trying to ascertain what the enemy's disposition will be and outplay that, right?
Yeah.
But yeah, to go back to the more general question of how do you succeed, right? It is kind of straightforward in that you make the game better, right? You put it on sale to move people to buy the game. And then you improve your retention coefficient over time by making a superior product, right, to what you had before. And so if you could just keep that cycle going, you will grow, because you look at any other multiplayer game out there, like any other multiplayer FPS, they seem to observe a linear growth pattern. Like even if they only have like a concurrency of, say, like 2,000 or something, right? Mm-hmm. It's like their audience will just keep going sort of in proportion, or I should say in relationship to their concurrency, right?
Okay.
So yeah, it's really just like stay in the game, you sell copies, you know? So that's the game plan.
All right, sounds good. Speaking of the game plan, how can the community help with making the process a success?
YouTube. Like, you know, our biggest challenge right now is no one knows about this game, right?
Yeah.
So what we need is YouTubers who are serious about making a career of it, right? Uploading regular content covering this game, you know? And, you know, I see all the like little videos that people post on the subreddit, and I watch a lot of those, and it's nice to see the game getting played, right? But we're talking about like, there's a difference between making a video every now and again and being someone who's like, okay, I'm going to try and have a YouTube career and I will upload regularly and that kind of stuff, right? And basically what we need are, they don't even have to be big content creators. Like, even if they only have subscriptions in the hundreds, right, or the thousands, that's sufficient enough that if we had enough of those people going, it would increase the sort of surface area of the game for us to really start growing our concurrency in periods that aren't just sale periods, right, but also passively, right? And if we can get that happening, then that's really the key to success, because once we can get a high enough concurrency, our matchmaking can use skill more as a criteria for who gets matched with whom. And when that happens, you've got better quality games and you have less burnout, because, hey, you know, if you 5-0 a bunch of noobs in this game, they're gone. Or I guess 4-0 now because of the casual change, right? But if you just wipe them, right, you just delete those kids off the internet, they don't come back. Like, surprise. So that is kind of an ongoing battle, you know. It's just trying to make the game quality better in terms of matchups, you know, and making it so that people start communicating earlier and actually get the good because it's like, dude, like, I've personally sold people on this game. They didn't know who the hell I was or anything. I'd just hop in their casual match, right, and I'd walk them through, like, here's a plan. We'd execute the plan. They just like do something simple, like, oh yeah, they throw flashbangs in, and then do something like a cross, like through a door, right?
Yeah.
And in that moment, they like score a kill, and they see like the whole team moves in, like a whole SWAT team would, right? And then maybe they get the lights and clear with NVGs or something, and they're like, they have that moment, they're like, oh my god, this is the best game I've ever played, right? And it's like, oh well, that's really awesome, right?
Yeah.
But the problem is, you know, we need the everyday player to have that experience every time in order for them to retain, you know. And if your experience is just getting owned and you have no idea, you don't even really comprehend how the planning phase is supposed to work, or just what the like it simply is as important as positioning your character in the right spot, right? Like people don't get that because no other game actually, like, they're kind of like they're built around it, right? But it's like you can achieve that level of mastery through repetition, and it's not like you have to, how do I put this? In this game, it's like you have to hold a staircase because you identified that it's really valuable from a top-down map. And in other games, it's like that staircase is really valuable because I've gone it up 100 times, and there's always a bastard who like peeks here, so I'm going to peek there, right? And it's like a totally different skill set, you know?
Yeah. Okay. So, quick question: MAWP or SAB-R?
Well, which team am I on?
that's a good question, I guess.
Honestly, I prefer the SAB-R because I can get headshots, right? So it's like, even if I have a MAWP, like I might take a MAWP on the attacking team if we stole one, just so that someone else can SAB-R. But yeah, I'm clicking heads is fine. It's just a question of fire rate, right?
I see. Okay, so let's get to one of the other bigger topics. On the roadmap, there is the Defender economy coming up not too far in the future. And people are wondering what that is all about. How will it work? What is it exactly?
So how do I explain this succinctly? So part of the strategy of success here, right, that we're talking about is you make the game better, right? And how you make the game better is obviously you make improvement to the systems of the game, right? So we could say improve player locomotion, or we could improve matchmaking so that it doesn't suck as much, right? Like we could make gunplay better, for instance, right?
Which
That's
we are
all
doing.
well and good. Yeah, which is something we're doing right now, actually. That's all well and good, right? But that doesn't get butts and seats, right? Like, you know, when people encounter that kind of stuff, it will make their experience better, and hopefully that improves the retention coefficient, right? But the problem is, you know, I don't think a lot of people will come back to the game just because the guns feel a little different. That probably won't even reach them as like a message, right?
Mm-hmm.
But what does get people back is content, right? Like, say, if we do a new level, obviously that is something that people probably sorely want at this point, having played these 3 maps for many years now, if you're a alpha player. But then, of course, like, well, maps are cool, right? But you kind of need your content to push on multiple axes, because a map is not going to be like, if you just bank on your fresher content being maps, right, that will eventually get old, right? There's going to be limited returns. The first new map you do is going to be a really big deal, but the 10th map you do is not going to be a very big deal. And I know this because, like, I don't even know what the latest Siege map is, you know? Like, I have no clue. So the thing is that you want multiple axes to push on when it comes to content. Now, where I'm going with this, right, is, hey, you know, adding new guns to the game is something that is a powerful new content axis to push, right? Is, you know, if you say it were to add like a lever action rifle, right? Like that would be very cool. And I'm not talking about just like, oh, well, you know, spam 10 different assault rifles, right? I just mean like guns that play different, they feel different. That's good, right? Like in our game, you know, like there are all these hero-based shooters and that kind of stuff, right? And each hero coming out is like the new big deal, right? Well, in our game, it's really just the weapons or the characters because we don't have the concept nor the budget to make a hero-based shooter, right? So, you know, where I'm coming from is we got to add new guns and new gear to the game in order to keep things fresh. And most importantly, to actually make the game better and more strategic, right? The problem that the crim economy is trying to solve, right, is, you know, you play a game like Call of Duty or maybe Insurgency Sandstorm. That would probably be something that I played more. Why pick something other than the most effective gun? Like, if you're playing, quote, competitively, right? Like, and you want to win, and that means you want to get the easiest kills possible. Why aren't you going to just choose the thing that is the best, right? For instance, in Insurgency,
obviously.
there was a few patches where all I would use was the fucking Taz shotgun on the Insurgent side with flèche rounds, right? And it was a point and click adventure. It didn't matter, like, it, you know, it's a shotgun, right? But it could shoot out to 100 meters effectively and you'd still kill a guy, right? Like, it was just like the answer to every problem in the game was Taz, right? And it was just like, okay, you know. Now, in that game, right, like why that is because you have all of these guns, but you can just pick any one of them whenever you want, right? And, you know, it's not what people really did. I maybe in like the ranked mode or whatever, they would play super seriously like that, but you'd see a good variety of guns because people just wanted to experiment and play with all the guns, right?
Mm-hmm.
What the crim economy is meant to do is two things. One is create a mechanism for using the whole armament into process instead of just spamming the same favorite gun over and over again.
Mm-hmm.
You know, because it's like, frankly, this won't be the case after Gunplay 2.0, I don't think, but right now that KR-82U is the best gun, like, period. You know?
Yeah, it's very strong, definitely.
Like, if I pick it up as an attacker, I'm just like, oh, easy next game, you know? I just don't like a system where it's like you have two instances of that and the people who are in the know grab it and they profit from that. And then like, that's it. It's just gone. And you have to filter down to the lesser guns based on whether or not you survive. It's like, yeah, okay, it's a system and it does have some variety to it. Like, because we only give you two KR-82s and not infinite Tazes, you do you're
sometimes forced to pick something else.
Yeah. But ultimately, it's like, if you can imagine an armament where instead of simply the KR-82U, right, there's also a KR-82 or, you know, 10 other decent mid-ranged weapons, right, then it's really just going to be this ranked order of preference. So if you just work your way from, here's the meta gun that everybody wants, and then we're going to just work our way down in crappiness depending on your positioning choice, right? Because you're probably going to pick your position and then pick your gun if you're smart, or you might pick your gun and then pick your position if you're one of these aimers instead of brainers, I guess, right? Hey, they're viable approaches, right?
Yeah.
But basically what the crim economy is meant to do is mix that up and get you to play, frankly, more like an Insurgent would, where it's not you get to pick your favorite weapon every time, but rather it's like, you're going to pick the weapon appropriate for the job that you want to do and make it work based off the kind of constraints of the scenario, right? And through that, I want to achieve a greater variety that's more like battle royale games, right? Where I think the best phase of any battle royale game, like PUBG, just I guess really the only one I've played because I haven't bothered with other ones, but the best phase is when you're fighting a guy who has like a double-barreled shotgun and you've got the lever gun, right? And now it becomes this game of positioning where it's like you don't want to push this guy, but you do want to peek him, right? Like that's cool. Is just having a bunch of different firearms that have strengths and weaknesses, and basically have they in a way the gun kind of plays you, right? Like it forms your decisions of what is wise to do and what's not. And that's what I want to do, is have people playing a variety of different play styles, not just playing the same thing over and over again. Because yeah, that is what any player wants to do, right? Like human, really any animal with a brain is trying to minimize surprise, right? Like that's what we do, is what I mean by that is like even the act of like predicting how high a ball is going to bounce, right? Like is an act of surprise minimization, because you're creating the model for like how high that ball will bounce back off the floor. And then if it reaches your expectation, then, you subtly train yourself to know this is the ball's characteristics, right? And you can create a good model of how the ball will behave. And that means that when you throw it and do all these other interactions with it, you're pretty good at predicting what will happen, right? And it's like, well, players want to do the same thing. And the best way to minimize surprise is this really simple hill climbing algorithm of, I picked up the NAC 11, that sucked, that was awful, I'm never taking that gun again. I picked up the Gruber, that was pretty cool. Oh, I picked up the KR, this gun's OP, the KR-82 is just like crazy, what the fuck? And then you just spam it over and over and over again until you're really, really good with something that was like, regardless of whether or not your perception's correct, it was just like, this thing feels great, and you develop this mastery, and it's like, hey, that's good, like I like it. But if all you do is just play that weapon over and over again, you're gonna get bored, And it's like, the part of game design is getting people to eat their vegetables, like you gotta have them eat a healthy, broad diet of experiences and not just play the same thing over and over again. Because that's what I do whenever I play some fucking game, and I spam it until I get bored, and that's it, so that's part of it. But then the second part is, so I guess to recap what I'm saying is the Chrome economy's purpose, or the Defender economy, I should say, is to create a framework where selecting different weapons is required, right? And that you shouldn't just do the same thing over and over again. The other purpose is to create a means to acquire gear in the game, because of the like gear being utilities, because okay, so we had this prototype phase during the alpha where it was basically, well, we're working on the network refactor, and so things are kind of stalled out on the main branch. What do we do with it? It's like, okay, well, let's take some time to just play around with stuff and test what works and doesn't work in this game. So we tried like health packs, we tried pipe bombs, we tried stim packs, we tried a bunch of things that people complain about to this day. But the real study was like, what happens when you do this, right? And the main problem is spam. Like, if you give people one stim pack, it has to be so stupid overpowered that the picking it is kind of absurd and just unfair to the other guy, right? Or you can make 6 shitty stim packs, right? But then people will just spam them in succession. Stimpack was like reduced damage, and you just sort of like able to tank stuff, right? And I'm not saying like, hey, I'm putting Stimpaks back in the game or anything. I'm just saying that, the common issue to anything that was added, be it pipe bombs or the Stimpaks or even the med packs, was just like, what happens when you're picking up too many of these and deploying them in an abusive pattern, right? And the answer was not very good, right? And so that's why scarcity is just, it's not a viable long-term solution unless you just want to have a game where there are Molotovs and there are barbed wire and there's flares and nothing else, right? Now and forever. You're going to have to come up with some framework to introduce new items to the game and use a combination of scarcity I should say availability, right? Like that, how many instances can be purchased at one point or taken, right? And then price, right? Which is like one of those is like a hard stop, right? Of like, we're not going to let you spam this, so we only give you maybe one per round or something, right? But then the other thing is price, which is a softer thing of like, well, is this thing as valuable as some other thing, right? And that's where the kind of beauty comes out, is when you're considering these trade-offs, it means that the variety of what you choose is greater than just like the same choice over and over again, which is just, whenever you take the KR-82U, you take the Stimpaks because you want to maximize your OP-ness with that OP gun, right? Like, this is the stuff we're trying to avoid. And so that's like the, without going into too much detail as to how the Defender economy works, right? Those are the purposes. And then the basic mechanism, right, is we give you like, I don't know, something like 5 coins for the beginning of a round, right? You can spend that across weapons and gear, and pretty straightforward, right? It's just like the insurgency allocation system, except more physical in that you're picking off a wall instead of a menu, because we already have that, right?
And we want to keep it for the availability aspect you just mentioned.
Right, like having the physical instances there instead of it saying out of stock in some menu is far superior, of course, right? But then the other part, right, is, changing what is available means that you have to consider different approaches on these levels than just whatever you would typically choose, right? So if you're choosing from a pool of weapons that are available, right, like you may choose this long-range gun because the other one isn't available. And like I said, as time goes on, that limited availability will make more sense, because it's like you can't have an economy system where it's like there's just 100 weapons on a wall and you can pick whatever you want, right? Like, that will just result in the same pattern over and over again. It's an exercise in pointlessness, because then basically all you're doing is you're just like buffing and nerfing guns constantly, and you have to, like, in order to get the variety out of your pool of weapons, you basically have to destroy the experience of the weapon permanently, right? And let something else live in its place. And it's like, well, we could go that way, guys, right? Or we could just make it so that, the best gun isn't always available, right? And we could preserve the coolness of that gun, but still force you to use all sorts of different stuff and like play as someone who has a more improvised approach to combat than, say, the enforcers, right? And the deal with the enforcers, right, is like, they don't work like that, right? What you see is what you get. You get the truck full of gear. It's always the same gear. They're constant, right? Like, they're consistent. These guys are a lot more, I don't know how to put it, a bit more haphazard in their approach, more opportunistic, right? And as time will go on, we'll revise the system, and I'm totally willing to listen to player feedback, right? It's just sort of like, frankly, the vision for some people of this game is basically just kind of make it more like a more condensed, gamey version of Counter-Strike, and that worked for Counter-Strike because Counter-Strike came out in like the 1990s and there were no competing products whatsoever to it, right? And it amassed an enormous user base, And if you want to make a totally steady state game design, right, go for it, you know. But unless you're like Rocket League, I don't think that's a viable approach, right? Like, I do think that people need variety in games to play them now, and you might as well just take advantage of the digital format instead of fighting against it. I should say the downloadable format as opposed to like digital, which could be on a CD, right? But people like changing their game. It's just kind of the art of the change. Is like, how do you make changes without pissing everyone off, you know? So, but yeah, to recap, right? Like, you get coins, you spend it on stuff. It's not really revolutionary. It's just what that does is it forces you to make interesting decisions instead of just use the same decision over and over again. And it means that the defenders aren't really budgeting, you know, barbed wire or Molotovs based off how many rounds they have to go, right? They're looking at terrain, they're saying, hey, we really need to hold that. What assets can we deploy to make that easier, right? And then go through the level, securing all the things they need, right? And they may have to do that with, you know, like, what if, for instance, they only had one barbed wire, right? Like, then that would be a very powerful thing to consider where it gets placed, right?
Yeah.
I'm not saying that's necessarily the decision that we'll go with, right? It's just more like, fuck, dude, I just hate that every time I play this game, it's like, well, there's a barbed wire in this store, because of course there is, right? And it's like, the only counter to the barbed wire is a frag grenade, which is meant to kill people, but now it's really the barbed wire removal tool, right?
Yeah. That's very true.
You know, there's some things that we can do on the enforcer end, like gear, to alleviate the problem, and we intend to do that, right? But between here and there, it's like there are other levers, avenues of approach that we can use to solve these problems, things that are less costly, right, in terms of development time. So that's why the Defender economy exists, is basically to give us a foundation to introduce new content for the defenders, and it doesn't break the game into spam. And it also means that, you know, we don't have this growing crisis of choice where eventually there's like a bajillion items on the wall to pick from, and some guy basically says, welcome to due process, I'll be your guide, right, and tells you what to pick up, right? So yeah, and then I should say there's like some concern over like attachments. I've heard there are like attachments in other games, right? Where they're just sort of like this trade-off game of, do I want this or that, and that kind of stuff, right? And it's like, okay, that's cool or whatever. Like, it's fine. People like putting stuff on their guns.
Yeah.
But most of the time, it's pretty obvious what you should choose, right? Like, for instance, in like Siege, like, most people use a magnified optic, right? Because that's going to be a significant aid in clicking ahead. No one really uses the lasers, as far as I can tell. There's always like the best grip to choose, and then two other superfluous grips or whatever, right? And like maybe you have a more advanced system like Insurgency, where these grips cost different money, right? Yeah. Or maybe it's like Tarkov, where it's like, you know, there's a totally Byzantine array of attachments that you can put on your gun, and you have to make trade-offs based on trader availability and market price and all this other stuff, right? And it's like, okay, those are cool, right? But like, really what we're talking about is percentage changes to recoil, and the obvious choice is just make the best percentage reduction for the minimum price, right? And yeah, it's just boring. Like, I hate the grips stuff. Like, in, say, something like Tarkov, it makes a lot of sense, right? But in our game, the attachments, it's not going to be like, oh, do I choose the angled grip or the QD grip or the whatever, you know? The attachments, their goal is actually far more specific, which is, first of all, they're meant to be a reward for survival, right? Like, that if you extract from the last mission, then you don't have to buy the gun again, right? And so now you can spend those points on purchasing something for your weapon that allows it to funnel better into a specific role, right? So it's like, if you say chose a suppressor for the defenders or something, right? Like if you chose a suppressor for your Gruber or something, right? Like then the point of the suppressor is not just, I don't know what other games do. Like the point in due process, right, is like if you're in a position where you have a surprise attack, it allows you to maintain initiative slightly longer, right? Because you're not going to have the incoming fire effect display that is the like red bullets that come by you, right? The spatialization of the sound will be more like broader, I guess is the way to put it, or general. So it's like you won't be able to pinpoint exactly where the suppressed shots are coming from. And of course, if they're playing underneath gunfire or anything, you're probably not going to hear them at all, right? Like that's a good attachment in the system, is like something that gives you a style of play, right, that isn't accessible without it, right? Another thing would be like, say if you chose a drum magazine and that's going to be your plan, is like to emerge and gun down multiple people in a room, right? Like then not having to reload is going to really help you with that, right? Where if you're just getting into, say, like a 1v1 or not, like just like any kind of standoff fight where you have time to reload, like really are the extra 20 rounds going to help you that much? Like like you have to consider your positioning with an attachment, like how's it actually going to help you achieve what you want to do, right? But yeah, it's not, the system isn't designed where it's just like we're just throwing things in a bucket. It's all like very intentional in that what I'm trying to do is get people to play the game in more varied ways, because that is a more robust pattern for this game succeeding than just playing the same thing over and over again.
Yeah. Coming back to the point you made earlier, basically.
Yeah.
Okay. Cool. So a little bit more specialized question regarding that topic, from one of the veterans of the game.
Sure.
All questions were anonymous, so I don't know who it was, but judging by the question.
Oh.
By the way, all questions are, just for the viewers, all questions are kind of, like, I did go through them and summarize them and put something together there, reworded some of them, but I tried to get the gist of what we got and regards to questions.
Yeah,
so
and I want to say if there are follow-ups in chat or whatever, like I'd be happy to answer them.
I mean, there's a bunch of stuff in chat,
Right.
but I'll try to keep a lookout for some follow-up questions. Okay, so one of the main points of Defender economy is to add more weapons and tools, as you just described. However, things like card, shield, and suppressors used to be in the game before without the Defender economy. Why did you decide to implement Defender economy before bringing those pre-alpha features back?
Because those, okay, so the suppressors aren't hard, and they will be part of the economy, first of all.
Okay, that's good to know.
But okay, here's the deal with the cart and the shield. The cart, that one's simpler, so I guess I'll tackle it first. I don't know if alpha testers remember this, but if you abandoned the cart and it was floating in midair, right, it would just stay in midair, right?
Yeah.
Like there were problems where you could teleport outside the map by backing up the cart into a wall, right? Do we remember that? The cart is just one giant exploit crisis waiting to happen. So that's why it's not back yet. And it's fine. I like the cart. I thought it was super cool. I was very pissed when Fortnite put a shopping cart in their game. It was like, don't you dare. It's just, the cart is janky as shit, and it's going to require a considerable rework to actually make what is effectively a vehicle that is pushed by someone like a wheelbarrow, right, kind of work. And I'm not even talking about like the basic stuff of like, or I guess the more elaborate stuff of like, well, what happens when you try and take that thing up the stairs in the factory, right? Like, like, do we what do we do there, right? That's not even answered. I'm just talking about like, how do we make it not go through walls, right? How do we make it not teleport people, that kind of stuff. So it's like, you know, I get it. I want the cart back in. It's great. But there's a reason why every other fucking game does the Tachanka turret, right? And it's because it's really easy to implement and you're just done with it, right? So that's why the cart isn't back in. The shield is actually a bit more I wouldn't say it's tougher. I would say that the cart's more difficult, but the shield, the quality standard is much higher than what we could deliver before. Because the way the shield worked before was it was a giant bully wall, and all you would do is just walk up to someone, right? And then you just press the quick swap button, which is like Z or something, right?
No, you actually didn't. Quick swapping was slower than just swapping to the other weapon.
Okay, yeah.
So yeah, that killed me once. I remember.
You just switch to your shotgun, right? You walk up to a guy, and he couldn't do anything, and you press the one key and left click, right? And then you blow him away. And my question to you is, do you want to be on the receiving? Because that's kind of bullshit, right? Like there's no that is not tactical shield play, right?
No.
Like that's just a meme.
Yeah.
You know?
I mean, I guess you could add a delay to the weapon switch.
Well, okay, fine, yeah, but if we add a delay to the weapon switch, yeah, let's do it. Let's make it a ridiculous delay, like 1 second to switch, right? Well, then he's going to see your telegraph that you're putting down the shield, right? Then he's going to shoot you in the face with a shotgun, right? So what's the point of the shield, right? Like, you can't push with it. It's either you can push with it, and it's the single greatest asset that the attackers have is the ability to just run up to a guy and delete him, and there's basically nothing anyone can do about it unless you're going like really deep on sub-target, right? Like just the first guy you encounter, right? So it can be that, or it can be a total piece of shit where it just like, if you take it into battle and you end up in a situation where you have to defend yourself as a shield bearer and you don't have someone behind you, right? You're dead. Now, at least that one is more preferable, right? Like the you know, you have to have a guy behind you team playing with you. Like, hey, I'm all about that. That's why I made this game, right? That's why I want the shield. So some guy is standing over you with a rifle and he's taking the shots and you guys are coordinating together, right? Here's the problem with that. Someone like Mace will just, calling him out, they'll just wait around the corner and they will just pump one round straight into you by intersecting through the shield and then killing you, right? And that's it, right? And it's like the answer to why those two things haven't come in is it's gonna take us a long time to do it. So we could sit here with basically no progress to anyone, right? And work on those two things, which are massive, massive time sinks because they've got all sorts of nasty edge cases, right? Or we could do something in the interim that unblocks general content for the game that will make the game better, right? Which is the chrome economy. And then build off of that, right? While allocating an engineer to make those things up to a higher standard, right? Where we can do things like, you know, you can shoot while holding the shield, right? Like that would be kind of a solution to the Mace walking up and shotgunning you problem, right? Like maybe we could even make it so the shield like prevents people from walking through you, that kind of stuff, right? It's just all of that is it's not as simple as it sounds, right? There's a reason why there's no body blocking in the game right now, right? Like it takes a lot of time to make those things not total shit, right? And then it takes a lot more time to make them actually good. And so it's like it's still very much in the total shit phase. So it's just going to be a while until we can do something well. But it's like, I want to do those shields, right? I want to do them better than Siege did, right? Like that's going to be a point of pride for me when I get shields that people actually feel like a SWAT team falling up their shield guy. That's going to be awesome, right? But
Yeah.
it's, the day that shields come in, there's going to be a lot of fanfare. There's going to be a trailer for it. Like, I got it all planned out in my head. It's just there's a lot. It's a pretty cool trailer too, but it's going to take us forever to get there. That's all. So in the meantime, we're going to do stuff that is easier, right? That will make the game better, and then we will take it up to the quality that it needs to be. And then when those shields come in, they're going to change the entire attacker meta, because they're going to have like this whole fulcrum that they can pivot around, right? With this tank, right? And that's what the shield should feel like. Like a bipedal tank has just walked into the fucking battle, and what are you going to do about it? Like, you have to plan around it. You can't just be like, yeah, we'll just, I don't know, wait around the corner on him. That will probably work pretty well if he doesn't check the corner. But point is,
I mean, that always
I guess
works.
what you can't do is wait around the corner and then shotgun him through the shield, right? Like,
Yeah.
You actually have to set up a crossfire with a guy where it's like you distract him and then I pop him. Like that's the moment right there.
Yeah, absolutely.
So, in time it will be done. We have not forgotten about it.
So basically, what you're saying is, even though we had it in the game already, and it might look like a fairly easy grab, it's actually a lot of work, and that's why it's not prioritized.
Yeah,
as
because
high
it wasn't
as other
remotely
things.
done, right? And
Yeah.
basically, players are operating on an honor system that is long gone now that we were in early access, right?
Yeah.
Everyone knows all bets are off. It's maximum ruthlessness now. So, anyway.
Okay. Good answer, I feel. So one more defender economy question. Not sure how. Well, we'll see. Will the defender economy fundamentally change how defenders manage their equipment, or will veteran players be able to use their experience to intuitively know when to buy what? Like, will we see completely different strategies based, like, on the first iteration, I assume? Or
Can
will
you
it be
repeat
like
the
roughly the
question
same
real
thing?
quick?
Will the defender economy fundamentally change how defenders manage their equipment, or will veteran players be able to use their experience to intuitively know when to buy what? So when to buy which tool?
Gosh, I think that just supposes that the crim economy is way more elaborate than it is, right? Like,
Okay.
the whole point of the thing is to be as simple as possible, right? And I think the problem with the crim economy, calling it the crim economy, was the arch mistake of it. Because if I'd chosen something more innocuous like the crim shop, right, then you can picture like the Zelda shop theme playing or something. Like, it's friendly. The crim economy makes it sound like it's 100% Counter-Strike. Like, you have to figure out whether or not you have enough money to buy, armor and an M4 and, blah, 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 right? And it's like, no. It's way, way simpler. Like, it's integer coins, right? It's not, I guess they're integers in Counter-Strike, right? But it's not, you're not like going to be $100 short of armor if you buy this gun or that gun. It's very, very simple, and why that is we only have 3 rounds to play with. It doesn't need to be crazy. It just needs to enforce a basic variety to play style. It's the minimum complexity we can add is what we're trying to do, right? When it comes to knowing what to buy and that kind of stuff, like, really, honestly, it's going to alleviate some of the tactical considerations, because it's not just, you're not playing this game then of, we have only, how many barbed wires is it now? 9?
9, yeah.
Is it? Yeah, okay. So you have 9 barbed wires, right? And we need to pace that naturally 3 per round, ideally. Maybe we'll get away with 2 here, right?
Yeah. That's generally how it goes. Like, going 2 here, 4 there, or just 3 every round.
Like, I don't want you to be able to say buy nothing but barbed wire, right? And everyone just chooses a pistol and 2 barbed wires, right, as their loadout, and you just make this level look like a scene from Saw, right? Like, that's not going to happen, right? Because, yeah, that's a very, very effective strategy, and while it is funny, it's just kind of annoying, right? Like, it's not substantial. So we will limit the total number that you can buy through this availability, right? But it's like maybe your plan needs 4 barbed wires to work. Well, you will be able to choose that, right? It just will come at costs probably to firepower, right? Or maybe to your ability to follow up with Molotovs and all that kind of stuff. It means that you have to consider trade-offs, and it's not about like this, this attrition game with the economy where it's like you got to pace all these assets out. That's the enforcer style of play, right? We want to have the enforcers work that way, where over time they become more predictable, right? And we want the defenders to work in the opposite way, where it's like if you give them space to breathe, that's when they start getting creative, right? And so it's like, how do I explain this? You will know what to buy, right? Because it's going to be what your plan requires, and not like playing this sort of obtuse game of what is available, right? It's going to be like the attackers will be able to predict what you want to do based on, I saw them do this last round, so they want to do this kind of strategy again, right? So we should plan against them, barbing up the south office toxic side, and in order to counter that, we're just going to spend our charge to go through dock, right? Like essentially what the idea is you're not trying to keep track of barbed wires on the attacker team to understand where they're going to be. It's going to be a bit more intuitive a process, right, than just keeping score, if that makes sense.
Mm-hmm. Okay, follow-up question actually from chat, from Derby. Why would I buy a wire instead of an awesome gun?
Why would you buy a wire instead of an awesome gun? A shitty gun with a slow peak is way better than an awesome gun where a guy bangs and clears your ass, right? And you don't get a single shot on him. That's why.
Okay.
Like, if I had a total piece of shit gun, right, that requires one more shot to do, right, but it's against an adversary where I know exactly how he has to peek me, I'm ready for him, he doesn't know where I am, right, like that's going to be an advantageous position, right, even though I'm not as well armed. But yeah, if someone's able to move, like, you're basically asking what's the trade-off between mobility and firepower, and my answer is there is a trade-off. It's situational, right? If your plan doesn't revolve around limiting attacker mobility at all, right, you're probably going to pick the firepower. But as you know, even if you pick the coolest guns in the game, right, like the attackers are pretty tanky, and it's not just a question of like, yeah, we just picked awesome guns, so we won. It's not going to work. You're just going to get overwhelmed. So, on the other hand, right, like if you're like playing against a totally unskilled team, as is often the case, unfortunately, yeah, you would be able to buy guns, and that's probably going to be what you need for the plan, because if they don't have a clue, then not much I can do there, right? The economy is geared toward the full power experience of due process, and not the edge cases of just potato team versus people who know what they're doing, Yep,
that makes sense. All right, I think we covered this topic pretty broadly now, so let's move on to something else. Here's a more personal question, I guess. If you could tell your younger self one thing about game design, what would you say?
It's really easy, don't sweat it. Seriously though, like I was very concerned with the game design part of this, and it's like 1% of the job. It may be the most important 1% and the funnest, right? But it's not like my boy Elon puts it pretty well, that the car is a complicated machine, right? But the assembly line that constructs the car is about 1,000 times more complicated, right?
Mm-hmm.
And similarly, the game design, it's not really that complicated, really, right? But game development is like, not even game, but like making a game studio is the real design challenge, right?
Yeah.
And
It's even one step further back.
I made so many mistakes. It's a miracle that we're here today, right? Like,
okay.
It's just, and I think in some cases it's due to honestly the strength of the concept, right? Because it's like, again, as that person asked, like, how are you gonna make this a success? I don't know if it's gonna be a success. All I know is that the only reason that we're still here is we made a ridiculous number of mistakes that would have killed a studio several times over by now, and we're still here because the concept is pretty strong. Like that people understand that this game has something about it that is worthy of living. It's just a question of whether or not we can actually deliver on it. So yeah, what I would tell my young self is, don't be such a fucking idiot thinking that making a game studio is easy. It's the hardest thing you're ever going to do in your life, and you should actually read up on how to do it and take it seriously instead of just being like, it'll be fine, So, yeah, that's it. And like, honestly, in regards to like the design stuff, I used to think that, well, I guess I kind of do still think that there's like, it feels like there's something really wrong in this business where it just doesn't seem like we can come up with very interesting things to do. And all we really do is just kind of rehash the same shit over and over again.
Yeah.
And it's not like, it is a bad thing, and it's like this whole game design business isn't getting the respect that it deserves, right? Essentially putting creative people in the right spot to make crucial decisions about what a product is, and what's important. But on the other hand, right, like, that's all well and good, but like the only thing that really matters is like, do you get out there? And I think the reason why all studios are really optimized toward getting some mediocre thing out there is because that's the survivable thing, and it's like, I don't play a lot of games, right? Because I don't really see a lot of things that are
interesting.
Yeah, it's like interesting. Of course, they're not interesting to me, right? But it's like, okay, I play this one game, which some people in the community are probably familiar with, called War Thunder, which is like, I don't know if people have heard like World of Tanks and World of Warplanes or whatever. It's kind of like that, but it's not shitty. Well, it is actually terribly shitty. It's like awful, but like in its deepest reason to exist, it's not shitty. And what I mean by that is, it's like, I don't really play the tank mode anymore because I lost a monitor to frustration from that. So I only play the planes now. But
Okay.
like all like, it's like you aim with a mouse and a keyboard and you're controlling a plane, right? So it's not like it's not completely realistic, because you essentially have this layer of abstraction between you and the game controlling the plane for you, right? That said, compared to something like Battlefield, right, which is a fucking travesty of air combat, like, it doesn't capture any of what it's about remotely. It's just a joke, right? It's like, I don't like, I don't even know how to describe it. Like, what would be an appropriate analogy? Like Battlefield's air combat is to air combat what Mario Kart is to like racing.
Right? Okay.
And it's like, but like Mario Kart's actually fun.
Yeah.
Is the problem. So like Battlefield doesn't even make the fun part, in my opinion. And I didn't play a lot of Battlefield, but I did play a lot of the new original, like the pre-Battlefront 2 Battlefront, the remake that's also called Battlefront. Who knows what to call it? I enjoyed flying like the arcade A-Wing in that, and would really like. I was kind of a problem in that game.
Okay.
Not to brag too much, but it was like people would leave the server when they saw that I was in it. They'd be like, "No, not that guy." because all the vehicles were like stupid overpowered. Like you could crank the FOV down on the A-wing, right, to 44.
Okay.
And just because like the FOV would modify the draw distance, you could see players from a kilometer away, right? Little white storm just walking around and be like, delete, 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 delete. It was a lot of fun, right? Like it was nasty, and you'd see all these like TIE fighters spawn to try and take me down and be like, no, I know how to fly this and you don't. And it was fun, right? And it's like there's this mastery element, and I wish that even though, you know, it's like arcadey because it's Star Wars, like they don't even make sense as like craft, right? Like what even is this A-wing? Yeah, it's fun, but like the really fundamentally what it did is like one player could inflict a great deal of pain because the flight model was how do I put this? It was deep enough that you could actually master it and be substantially better than other people, and it wasn't just like shitty war of attrition of just like, I can put this many bullets into you before you put this many bullets into me, right? So the reason why I play War Thunder is, you know, more extreme version of that same trend, right? It's like, this is a game where if you know the characteristics of your plane, if you know its strengths, right, and you know like the little tricks you can do, right, you can fucking dance, right? Like it's like ballet. It's the best thing ever in that, you know, you're playing this game that strives to replicate the depth of the subject matter that it's depicting, right? And that's the kind of stuff that I like to play, right? Is, okay, what is this game about? You know, it doesn't have to be a simulator, right? But it usually is, because at least, like, you know, if you play something like Dirt Rally, right? Like the promise the game is making to you is this is going to be like driving a rally car minus the G-forces, right? Like it's as close as we can possibly get. Like you can put on a VR headset if you want, and we will put you to the best of our ability in that car, and you will have all the traction concerns and all of the like beauty of that actual activity, right, in the game. And yeah, that's the kind of shit that I play. More often than not, it's a sim because they make that commitment. It could be something like kind of, I don't know, like a game like Superhot is something I played because it had that kind of same weird commitment of like exploring, this is what this is about, right?
Yeah.
But yeah, like, anyway, all I'm trying to say is like, I don't really play a lot of other games because they just don't, like, what's the point, you know, honestly. But yeah, you know, like, I wish there were games more like that, but I think the fact of the matter is that more people play this World of Warplanes game than War Thunder, as far as I can tell, right? So
yeah,
I don't know, dude. I guess I just make games for people that like actually really appreciate games, and then the real market is people who like just don't play a lot of games, you know. But you know, in very much the same way, like, okay, yeah, does Due Process have like a commitment to realism like a simulator? No, right? But that was done to get kind of the subject matter, right? Like you don't move like a real SWAT team in this game, but
yeah, no,
you know, you do kind of play like a team, right? Like you play as the SWAT team. The concepts of what you're trying to execute are similar. It's just in a more arcadey model, because, you know, as Doom kind of discovered like a long time ago, the expectation of how you move in a video game is beyond the reality of the situation. And if you try and make the game real in its movement, you just feel like you're in mud, you know?
yeah.
And from that, everything else kind of follows, right? So, but I just say that, like, yeah, you know, I wish there were more games making this kind of commitment, but honestly, it seems like it doesn't seem like game design is that fucking valuable, dude. You know?
Well, that's a depressing point, but I get where you're coming
Honestly.
from.
Well, it's like, okay, like here's a game that I'm interested in is that what's the Russian game that's like it's like Russian BioShock. Do you remember what that's called?
No, I don't know what you're talking about.
Oh, really? It's kind of like a big deal. It's like
Russian
maybe chat will have
Atomic
the
Heart is chat
yeah,
suggesting.
Atomic Heart, right?
I
Like
actually never heard about that. How
game,
did I miss that? Okay.
that game looks really, really cool, right? Like its setting and its premise and all that kind of stuff is really, it's mysterious and engaging, and like the sort of like cultural product that they're making is extremely resonant, and that game's going to do fantastic, right? Like it's going to be a really big deal, right?
Okay.
And I'm very interested in it, but I'm probably not going to play it because it looks like it's just going to be BioShock in its game design. And what I mean by that is it's like, yeah, you smash shit with a wrench, right? Which I know will probably be a type of wrench that's more common in Russia than in the bottom of the sea, right? I guess in BioShock it's like a pipe or something, right? And yeah, you shoot things, but it's like, guys, let's be real, like what possibly could that game actually deliver in its game design that hasn't been delivered within the last 20 years several times over, right? Like it's gonna be that, but with a real cool skin. And it's like, I just don't do that anymore. I don't care, you know. Like I wish them best of luck because it looks really, really cool, but it's, you know, and that's the kind of thing is like you know, like I play things like Tarkov because there's something like really deep about that game, you know, and I don't really bother with everything else. And I just think it's because, like, honestly, the game design isn't that important. That's not the important thing with most games. It's just the sort of like product design, I would call it, right? Like making something that appeals to people is more often a question of theme, right, than making something that is well designed and actually makes you consider as a player, if that makes sense.
Yeah, I think I understand where you're
like here's
coming from with that.
Okay, I have the perfect example of that. Like you know that Alien Isolation game that released, right?
Yeah.
In spite of the fact that it was totally broken on launch, it sold a bajillion copies, right? Because it's Alien Isolation, right?
Yeah.
And of course, famously, the thing that broke was there's just like a config file. It was missing like a curly brace or something on your machine, right? And once you completed the curly brace, the AI started working again. And
yeah, I remember. Yeah,
right. And it's like, yeah, because the quality of the game didn't fucking matter at all, right? It was just all of being on, I don't know what's the name of the ship, the Vladivostok or something, right? Like whatever. You know, being in the alien world.
Oh yeah, I think you mix up alien games though, right? You're talking about Aliens Colonial Marines.
No. I'm talking about the one that's like it's Amnesia Dark Descent, but alien.
Oh no, right? Yeah, no, I remember. No, there was the issue with the bracket as well. Yeah, no.
Yeah, you're right. Bracket.
Yeah.
I think the Colonial Marines is much deeper than a curly brace, unfortunately. But,
that was just broken.
Yeah, and so it was like that's where I'm coming from. It's important to me, and I think it's important to a certain like variety of gamer, right? But like, it's not that we're like a dying breed. It's just we've been vastly displaced by a lot of people who just. Yeah, let's just leave it at that.
Okay. A follow-up question from what you said earlier, that like there were a lot of mistakes being made when creating the studio, and so a guy wanted to know what kind of mistakes are we talking about here?
Oh God, hiring mistakes in the beginning was really, really bad. You know, that I would say is the worst thing. We made, I don't want to say really much more for the respect of the people involved, right? But there were some hiring mistakes that we made that cost us years.
Okay.
And the other mistake is actually one of my own, right? There's another book which is called The Hard Truth About Doing Hard Things, or something to that effect. It's another startup thing. And basically this guy, he's like a VC dude. So he started up his own thing and then made a bunch of money and then went into VC, right? And kind of wrote this guide on like how to tech startup, right? But yeah, one of the things that he says and is essential to founding any technology company, unsurprisingly, is having a technical co-founder, right? So that is someone who is a truly gifted and perhaps the best word is cogent, measured, a technical co-founder who basically can deliver the product that you need to do, right? It's within their capability, right? We didn't.
Okay.
That's the source of all fucking evil right there, right? Is, dude, I went to a school, like, there's no excuse. I went to a school that the RTS program at DigiPen is very, very good. The real-time interactive simulation is what they called it. They changed it to CS, RTAS, because no hiring manager knows what the fuck RTS is supposed to be, right? But yeah, like, making games is actually a programming challenge. Making a website is not a programming challenge, right? Like, you can fuck up making a website like in 10,000 different ways and it's going to be fine, because the whole thing is designed for you to fuck up as many times as you want and it doesn't break everything, right? With a game, it's like if you fuck up in one loop, right, your performance tanks and you have to like deal with it, right? Anyway, so this school, right, they're making games every year, and so that honestly puts them in much better position than most programmers. And yeah, like, I went to that school, I did what I wanted to do, which was get into IGF, kind of a dubious goal, but I managed to, I think mostly by a stroke of luck, but the IGF is like the Independent Games Festival. And after that, I was like, I just don't want to do my senior year. I'd rather take the money and found a company with that, right? Rather than have to find a job afterward and go do my time, which is like the worst concept I ever hear about in the game industry, is this idea of like paying your dues, right? Like you got to work some low job to work your way up, right? And it's like, yeah, I get it. And most people are kind of crappy, and so you want to filter them out through this low job thing, right? But it's like, no way am I gonna do that working on some fucking game that I didn't care about, right? That I don't believe in, because as I said, I don't play that many games, and the criteria is basically there's got to be something real special for me to not play something else, right? So for me to work on, I don't know, some BioShock clone or something, right? Like, never, you know, I'd rather be like a lumberjack or something.
Bard to lumberjack. Get the fan art.
Labor. Yeah. I have about the furthest thing from a lumberjack body right now. But yeah, it's like, I did not want to do that, right? But in that process, like, I just really fucked up and did not take the, hey, you're going to make a company part seriously enough. And because of that, we could have got some very gifted programmer out of there, right? There were a lot of them, and actually have released this game like 4 years ago, right? And we'd all be millionaires today and it would be amazing, right? And that is not what happened. So yeah, and by contrast, right, basically what cost us the most time was my decision to, basically, we had the block dude version of the game, which people still fucking ask about all the time.
It actually kind of stopped recently, like,
yeah, because the new people don't know about it.
Yeah,
right,
right, exactly.
It's okay. people will see. Basically what happened was I made the unilateral decision to scrap the entire prototype we had made, which is the Block Dude version, right? And start building something new, right? Which is the correct decision in that you don't want to take something that was never architected to be a real game, right? And make that into a like an actual product, right? You don't want to take the prototype that was meant to be built fast and had nothing built robustly, right? And make that into something product worthy, right? But on the other hand, you certainly don't want to do what I did, which is succumb to, in the Mythical Man month, that's called the second system effect, which is basically this delusion that programmers will get, and I'm not a good programmer, right? Where it's like, because they made the system the first time, they're like, now I know everything that this thing needs. And they start piling all these features and they start building things for like a future that doesn't exist, right? And because I did that, that cost us several years, right? Because basically people today are still encountering code that, it's not even code that I wrote. It's more just like the way that I had architected things, where it's like, yeah, this makes sense, but you did this for a feature that's still like 4, 5, 6 years later, it still doesn't exist, right? Like an example of this, right, which came up with, I was talking to Simber, who was trying to data mine our damage values, right? And he was like, yeah, it's kind of hard because like the damage is in the projectile, which is in the, like a component of the round, right, that gets fired out of the gun, and that goes through the gun, and the gun modifies that data, and that comes out to like a shot package, and this whole train, right? And it's like, yeah, because I wanted it so that you'd be able to select your ammo type, right? Like that you could put slugs in your shotgun along with buck, right? And that would mean that your shotgun is now viable at, long ranges. Not the best pick, right? Shooting a slug at long range, but you can still be effective. It can be more, you don't have that moment where you're in the factory and you're just like, well, I'm fucked because I have a shotgun and there's no play I can make. At least you could take some slugs and load them up and do something about it, and then wait for them to push your bomb site, right? It's still not in that feature, right? So that was a waste of time, and that, who knows how much that cost us specifically, but the game's just full of like stuff like that was really bad, and it all just came from like, I make creative decisions. I shouldn't be making technical decisions of how things work, right? I should be specifying, here are the requirements of the system, here's what I needed to do, and you can figure out how this all fits together and what's the most robust feature or way to solve these features, right? So it's like, it's just, that's where all the time went, if you guys want to know. So it's just like you make these crucial decisions that are really, really bad, and you do feel quite bad about them because they basically cost me all my 20s. I'm 30 now, and it could have gone much differently, and I know much better now, and I hope that we get another round to take what I've learned about what is actually needed, and I'm not saying I've learned everything, right? But to do the next game better, right? But yeah, we'll see. We're still got a long way between here and the next game. So
yeah, that's probably true.
But yeah, like game design, like it's just honestly, it's not hard. It is like, I don't know how to put this. I think in order to be a good game designer, right, you need to have an imagination, right? Like, that is to say, you actually have to be creative, and most people aren't very creative. And then what you have to have is a cogent goal, right? You have to be working towards something that justifies your game existing, and not just doing like, it would be cool if this or that existed, right?
Mhm.
And what I mean by that is, it's like, okay, well, if we were some other game team, right, we probably would have made a game with procedurally generated maps, right? A tactical shooter with procedurally generated maps, right?
Mhm.
We don't really bill it as that too often, for good reason, which is, what's there to gain, right? Like, why do that? And I think a lot of people they put the cart before the horse. So they're like, I like this cool feature and I want to make a game about this cool feature, be it like some piece of art or some programming technique or whatever, right? And it's like, that's stupid. That's a total waste of time. What you need to do is pick an experience for the player to have, right, that they can't get in another game. Because if they can get in another game, that's the Monopoly thing again. It's like, you're just wasting your time all over again, right? Like, if you're making a Call of Duty clone, right, why? Like, Call of Duty exists, they're going to kick your ass, right, if you're doing that.
That's a common pattern in the game industry.
The only reason you make a Call of Duty clone, right, is because you're appealing to the like Bangladeshi mobile games market or something, right? Like, where it's like, you're building an extremely low spec clone of another game that is towards some other market that doesn't really have access to Call of Duty, right? Because I don't know, presumably in Bangladesh they don't have, you know, really high-powered gaming PCs like in the West, right? I don't really know what it seems like there. It's just an example, right? Okay, fine, right? But that's not what I'm doing, you know? And so if you're not doing, you know, some other merciless grab of another game's idea, right, then it really comes down to, you got to deliver on something else that no one else is doing, right? And in this case of the game is like, okay, we make a tactical shooter where you plan and execute, and the procedurally generated maps came out of that because we had this goal, which is, we want people to play like a team. And in order to have a team, like, there has to be some kind of plan, right? Like,
Yeah.
you know, even if it's like football, right, where the plans, they're not, I wouldn't say that they're not complicated, but they're not like, it's not like they're rocket science, right? It's, this guy goes here, right? This is basically it. That's basically what we're doing, right? Is this guy goes here.
Yeah.
But it has to be comprehensible, you know, and you can, what the fuck is going on up there? You can't make a plan if the map is like, say, as big as the consulate map in Siege, right? Like, there's no plan. There's just gunfight, right? So we knew that we wanted to make something with small maps where there was a planning phase, and the goal was that we'd have people like shooting over each other's shoulders, right? Like, they'd be pieing off corners together. Like, you'll get the right side, I get the left side. This guy will cover long, right? Like, all that tactical goodness, right, was what we're trying to achieve. And the procedurally generated maps came out of that because it was necessary for the design, right? Like, we could have solved it in another way, right? You know, another way that I think about how we could have done due process is, what if there was like a really big map, or like, I don't know, like a city or something, right? And it's all just one big static map, right? But then you just move the objectives around dynamically, essentially like PUBG does it, right? Where it's like, Pachinki is always the same, right? But whether, I guess Pachinki's always relevant, so it's not the best example, but you kind of get what I mean, right? It's like, you have an interesting gunfight in some far reach of the map that you never really play in that much, right? Because that's where the circle is this time, right? So we could have done it that way too, right? But ultimately we went with the procedurally generated maps because, honestly, I didn't think of that approach. Probably would have saved us some time if we did it that way, but I think it would have ended up like a lot less cohesive a game too, you know?
Yeah.
It's hard to make a plan when there's a guy who's just going to be sniping you from some building over to the left, right? Like, you know. But yeah, I think that's, it's not hard, right? Just pick something that no one else is doing and figure out a way to actually get that moment to happen. And then when you do that, then provided that thing was something that people are actually interested in, then you succeed, right? But beyond that, it's like, it's a joke of a problem compared to like making a game studio, which is so hard I can't even articulate how to do it well, you know?
Well, we somehow got here, so.
Yeah. Through trial and error and not dying. So yeah, I hope my massive rant didn't piss anyone off, but what can I say? I got big opinions.
All right.
What else do you talk about?
What else? Sure. Let's go to the next roadmap question. Planning overhaul is in development on the roadmap. Can you be a bit more specific about what thoughts you have to revamp planning?
Okay, you ever have that moment in this game where it's like, we need someone to throw a smoke here, right? And no one picks up the smoke.
Yeah.
That's the overhaul, right? Like and that's like in the verbal case, right? Where we know we need this asset deployed in this position, and no one takes the wire, or no one takes the smoke,
or the clacker,
of course, yeah. Right? And the planning overhaul is meant to fix that case in the top tier of communicating players with pre-made teams, right? Where it's like, Smith is responsible for throwing a flashbang precisely in this corner on entry, right? So what that would mean is there's like a flashbang icon. Someone claims ownership of, I will be the one to do that, right? And then it shows up in their HUD as you're supposed to throw the flash here, right? Or the smoke or whatever. That is the thrust of it. We're trying to, that's what we want to do. The gulf between what we want to do and reality is, how do you make such a system that actually has uptake and people use it well, and it's a benefit as opposed to just complexity? Does it make sense? Mm-hmm. So that's really what the planning overhaul is meant to do, is make it easy to assign, to make the plan, right? And then to express that plan to other people, right? And then for people to buy in and understand exactly what they need to do in that plan, right? And then the additional goal of that is, how do you make that work so that players who are not either totally nonverbal, they don't have a microphone and they just never talk, right? Will be able to still participate in the plan. So it's like you have this moment where it's like, what if there's that one guy on your team that's just not talking for some reason? You don't know what's up with him, right? Well, if I say I need a flash here, right, and a door charge here or whatever, right, and he takes those things, then I know that I'm getting uptake, right? Like that, even though it's kind of a tough room, right, I might be more encouraged to talk. I guess I'm speaking like as a abstract player here, right? I might be more encouraged to talk and make plans if I have this tool that allows me to express my plan, and I can get nonverbal feedback that people are actually going to do this thing, right? Mm-hmm. So that's the planning overhaul in a nutshell. There's also some other surprises with it that are kind of necessary to make all that work. But you guys will see that when it happens. But yeah, it's pretty innocuous. It's just like, I don't know, I'm sure you guys hate it when you get in a game and no one's talking. That's like the worst fucking thing, right? So basically fix that is what we're trying to do. And this tool is not going to fix it, right? It will help alleviate some amount of the cases, right? But it's going to be a journey to get us to where, because it's like, you want everyone to talk, right? But I guess the way to do that isn't just say, if you don't talk in this game, you die, right? Because people continue to just not do that. The way to do that is to sort of make the barrier to them communicating more like a slope rather than a barrier, right? Where they can just sort of inch their way up and finally come out to you and say, here I am, ready to talk to you, Yeah, in my experience, most people who are nonverbal have a mic ready to go. They just don't say anything. And if you talk to them, they'll be like, oh, hello, which is nice, right? We just got to get people there.
Okay, yeah. So basically, because what you described was mostly the icon system, which is like when we look at the roadmap, it's a different task. But what you're saying is the planning overhaul is a bunch of systems that come in addition to that.
Yeah, they're related to that, basically.
Okay. Okay.
Good talk.
What?
I said good talk. Just go on, Pion.
Yeah, okay. Is the process a shooter with planning elements or a planning game with shooting elements?
That's a good question.
I think the original wording, actually reword this for clarity's sake, because I think the original wording of the question was, is this an RTS game with shooter mechanics or is it a shooter with RTS mechanics? Which is more funny, but I felt like
well,
RTS doesn't.
RTS, right?
Yeah,
Because,
exactly. RTS doesn't quite.
Yeah. If anything, it would be like turn-based strategy, right?
No way.
Yeah,
it's
I don't know.
Kind of frozen synapse.
Yeah, I'll just leave. Can you still hear me?
Yeah.
Okay. I just nudged my microphone cable.
Oh.
It's definitely a shooter with planning elements, but that's just a lame way to look at it, honestly. Not to offend the asker. It's a good question. I just mean that, like, it is a first-person shooter about tactical planning, right?
Mm-hmm.
Like, I dare say it is a tactical first-person shooter in the real sense of the word. That is to say, you have like tactics that you create and execute, and not a tactical first-person shooter in that it's like tactically themed. You know, you've got some load-bearing gear in an M4. That's not a tactical shooter, right? Like, the whole reason we made this fucking game is because it's like, no, like, if you make a game where, you know, I remember I used to play Raven Shield, right? And all the servers would not limit your grenade count, so you could bring 6 frag grenades into a fucking level or something like that. And
Okay.
all people would do, it would be like not realistic to the subject, right? Which is, you know, in any kind of SWAT scenario, right? There's barricaded suspects or terrorists or whatever the fuck inside, right? And then there's a superior adversary outside that is going to go in and kill them, right? And they didn't even have that in these servers. They're just like force on force meeting engagements, meaning like 2 guys of equal size basically move to contact with each other and then shoot each other, right? But it's not room clearing. There's no like hostages or anything. Maybe there's servers with it, but most of the games were just like kind of just team deathmatch. And all it was run around with realistic guns that kill people in like 1 hit, you know, right shot in the right place. And then how these matches would open is like everyone would just frag a hallway like 12 times, and then some poor soul would walk in the hallway and he'd get blown up by the last frag, and then the game would start, right? And it's like, okay, it's so lame, you know? So I got a real chip on my shoulder. That's why I made this game. Is like, these games aren't tactical. There's no tactics. Like, no one is doing anything in support to another. It's just a bunch of people running around with guns, you know?
Yeah.
So I guess, I hope that answered your question. Maybe it didn't.
I think it kind of did. Okay, more fun topic, I guess. Which new guns will we be getting in the future?
Classified.
Too bad. Anything you can say?
There will be new guns, and you guys will probably like them.
Okay.
I'm not. It's just, I have learned not to talk about anything until their release is imminent. Okay, so we are going to announce the new guns when we're sure that they're coming out, because I don't want people to be like, where are the new guns? And it's like, you know, 3 months from now or something, right? Now, I don't think it'll take that long. It's just, you know, they'll come out when they come out, and they will be chosen specifically to fill in roles that have not been filled, as far as we can tell. So,
okay, I fear the answer to the next question is the same. But maybe you can shed a little bit more light on that one. Are you planning to add more utility items? If so, which? Maybe headgear for defenders?
Absolutely, yes. Maybe what for defenders?
Headgear for defenders. They have the headgear slot, but cannot put
Yes,
anything there except
they
for
do have
the
a headgear slot, yes, and it
or the
is
stolen
headgear
NVGs.
slot. It's not the NVG slot. So, yeah, there will be things that we give them. If you guys have suggestions for utilities, we would love to hear about them. You know, because I think actually, like, it's easy for me to give you guys a claymore, right?
I was about to say, like, people ask for the Claymore
Yeah,
Roomba because
someone said something about the Roomba Boomba, right?
yeah.
Which the Roomba Boomba is funny as fuck, but it's not very interesting gameplay, I should say.
Yeah, it would be hard to make it an interesting tool, actually. Yeah.
Well, it's just like you just honestly you just use it as a normal claymore, and then you would just roll it into position if they weren't cooperating by going through the door you wanted, right? But well, that's funny. It's just more like, hey, you know, we gave way back in the Block Dude version, we gave defenders these little propane tanks, and you could shoot them, and they would blow up, and they would kill people. They were placeable red barrels, basically, right? Not fun.
No, I imagine.
You know, like surprise.
Yeah.
So, you know, while there is even a proposal for, say, a propane tank, it would work in a very different way than before. And I guess what I'm trying to articulate is making defender utilities is extremely hard, and ideas would be appreciated, right? It's just most of the time it's like it's pretty hard to come up with something that hasn't already been shot down, I guess. Like there's just I don't even know. Like the flare is a very good utility, right? Because it counters an expected attacker event. And, you know, given, say, like the defender economy system, you wouldn't just pick it because it's the last round or whatever, right? Like you'd have to be like, they're going to go for the lights potentially, so let's counterplan against it.
Yeah,
right?
because you actually have to pay for it.
Yeah, let's mitigate the scenario instead of just, oh, there are 3 flares taken, guys, might as well, right? That's bad. That's stupid. Yeah, flares are great. You know, like they assist you in getting the kill. They don't get the kill for you. So I guess that's the main thing. Is it's like, hey, it's great when the attackers drop a door charge for you and you use that against them. That's like the best feeling, right?
Yeah.
But giving you guys, say, the Roomba Boomba, as it were, it's just gonna. It's like mines are one of those things that are like well within the tactical reality of room clearing, right? Like booby traps and mines are like such a big deal that if you're facing an adversary that is known to use them, right, it's really not even worth going in. And so that's why we can't have them, is they're just too good. And it's really hard to, like, even if you do like, you know, cute shit like what Siege does, right, where those C4 packets have you approach them and you hear the sound of cellular interference, right? Because they got a phone strapped to them or whatever. Dude, it's not gonna. Players always find a way, you know. Like in the case of Siege, right? Famously, they throw them underneath floorboards because you can't hear it then, right?
Okay.
Yeah, it just sucks, and people complain about the trap meta all the time in Siege. I don't know where it is now, but it's like, yeah, so it's hard because it's like, it's either it's a trap, right, and it does damage or whatever, and it's kind of lame, or it's a throwable, in which case there's no planning required at all. Like, I hate the way that Molotovs play right now, because it's just like, anytime you try to seize on some advantage, there's a Molotov just waiting there, right?
Yeah.
You know, and it's like, I mean, that's also what the defender economy is trying to solve, is it's like, you don't want to just encounter the same frustrating patterns of play over and over again, where it's just like, yep, can't push in, can't do our dynamic entry because there's the Molotov, and okay, guys, just wait. Another one's coming. Oh, there's the Molotov. Okay, we just gotta wait here some more. It sucks, you know.
Yeah. So, also, it's like just you're waiting, which is a boring reaction to.
Yeah, waiting, not fun.
Yeah.
You know. Um, so yeah, like there's, again, I don't want to commit to anything. I just want to tell you guys that stuff is on the way. And once we have the defender economy in place, it will be very, very easy to justify adding this new item or that, because it doesn't break everything, right? And it also, everything is there ready for it, if that makes sense. So good things will come soon.
Okay, let's just for fun take a random suggestion from chat.
Okay.
What about a chain for the defenders that can put on the door, and that makes the attackers have to kick the door more than once? And maybe the attackers could have a bolt cutter to mitigate the chain or the counter.
Well, wouldn't they have to, like, I assume the chain would be on the inside, right?
I guess,
So
yeah.
You would kick the door down, and then a chain would be behind it. Well, Vince brought up the chains thing as basically honestly, like a hard barricade against, say, like a door charge, whereas like you could charge, the door would disappear and the chains would remain or whatever, right? And it's like, like
I mean, instead of a chain, I heard before the suggestion to just have like a chair or something you can like put under the door handle, so it's harder to kick.
Chair, guys.
Yeah, the tactical chair.
Why wouldn't I pick the chair every time and put it behind every door, right? Like, beyond, because there's a limited stock of chairs in this world, right? Like, I guess what I'm trying to say is, it's like one of those things where it's like the moment that it buys you, attackers sometimes kick doors now and get shotgunned through the door in the face and die, right?
Yeah.
And so, it's like the suggestions they're most welcome, right? It's just, if we go through suggestions, I'm going to have to shoot a lot of them down and look like an asshole, and I don't want to do that, because I don't think that they're bad ideas. It's just the ramification of them is going to be, do you get what I'm trying to say here? It's like, I have considered the chair, I guess is what I'm trying to say, or the chain.
I said it recently in a different stream, I think. Like, it's hard to come up with suggestions that we didn't thought about yet, because we had 6 years of development and a bunch of creative people in this team. So ideas are, like, we have thought about a lot of stuff already. And so it's hard to come up with something we didn't consider.
It's yet. Like, I guess what it is it's not like, that's not the tack that I want to take. It's not like, we're such big brains, we thought of everything already.
That's not what I meant, but
I understand. But I'm just saying that, like, no, it's that a suggestion just can't be a what about a chain, right? It has to be, okay, here's my pitch, right? There's this item in the game, right? And this is the problem that it solves for the defenders, right? And this is the scenario that the attackers have to deal with, right? And the scenario that the attackers have to deal with is equally important to the problem getting solved for the defenders. So it's like, in the case of the chair, right? It's like attackers can just storm in without warning through like a green door and just kick down their thing, and they need some way to get slowed down, right? And it's like, okay, that's fine. What's the attacker experience in encountering a chair? Well, the door looks exactly like any other door. And if it was, say, like the chain, right, then maybe you could do the siege thing where like certain attachments to doors will have like a tell, like they'll have like a drill or something, like some screw or something will stick through and give away that this door is booby trapped or whatever, right? Yeah, okay, fine, right? But then, like, you have to identify, well, how do the attackers counter, say, the chain, right? Do they just kick down the door multiple times and hope for the best? Like, maybe they have a shield, right, come up. But given that they can't plan for this event, right, like, what do they do when they don't have any assets to counter it? Like, what's the natural counter, right? And so it's just sort of like, in the case of, say, the Molotov, at least it's just wait, right? It goes away, and then you can proceed until the next one gets thrown on you. But I actually have a plan to fix that too, by the way. I don't like multiple spams in the same spot, and by God, we will solve that stupid problem. It's just that I guess what I'm trying to communicate is it's like ideas are great, right? Because like, you know, when it comes to just like creative ideas, I don't think anyone's really that good at just coming up with random shit, right? But people as a whole can do that quite well. And maybe you give me the idea for the Roomba Boomba, right? And I'm like, well, okay, I'm not wild about a Claymore, but a Roomba plus something else, right, might be really, really cool. And in this way, the community can like substantially, like they can help me get ideas that I would never have, right? So I like the ideas. I want to hear about them, right? It's just, it's, I guess what I'm trying to say is making new utilities is not as simple as, you know, what if we do this thing, right? It's like, you have to consider all of these outcomes, and then you have to figure out whether or not it's actually good for the game and promotes a positive style of play, or is it, you know, going to just sink everything, you know? It's like, it's just, I guess that's a hard part in game design, right? Is like making any kind of abilities that are interesting and fit into the ecosystem of like any game. So like if you play something like Assassin's Creed, right, and they give you like throwing knives and they silently dispatch enemies and you can recover them from the enemies you just killed, right, then okay, that's like cool and all, right? But by giving the player throwing knives, what you basically did is you gave them license to get through any level by just throwing a knife over and over and over again, right? And there's no counter that the AI does, right? They just let you kill them one by one, and you pick up the knives and you just proceed through the entire game like that, right? And it's like, yeah, cool, throwing knives are great, but you just ruined all of the game, right? And that's why I don't play Assassin's Creed or anything like that, is they don't really care about not breaking the balance. Whereas like on the other hand, it's like, okay, well, fucking Ezio, because that's the last one I played.
Yay.
He has like
Ezio was best.
Yeah, he's got like a gun. He was funny at least, right? He's got a gun, right? Because gunpowder exists now. Sweet.
Yeah.
And the gun lets you take out people at range. Awesome, right? The gun should be it's a fucking gunshot, right? And people don't, I guess it's like Carnival or whatever, right? But generally people, like, I guess that's the cool thing, right? Is on the Carnival mission, you can fire the gun with no penalty, right? But the moment that people hear a gunshot, all the guards should be alert, right? And looking actively for this fucking auditory guy, right? And then, you know, hilarity ensues, right? But it's like, you use the gun because you need to accomplish like a very specific goal, right? Like take out some sentry, but doing so comes at a great cost, right? And that's I think good game design is like, just there are actions, some of them are powerful and they have varying consequences, right? And I guess the problem is it's like most thing, like when you're in a multiplayer game, like you really gotta figure out the consequences for both sides, that they're actually interesting consequences for each team, you know? So, okay, I guess that was another rant.
It's fine. That's what we're here for. Okay. A little bit more.
Like, who the hell is this guy? Because they've probably never heard from me before. So, you know.
I mean, I think a lot of the viewers are veterans, but
yeah. I guess those people know me. Yeah. I just haven't been terribly vocal lately. So
that's true. What is your? No, go ahead.
No, please go.
Okay.
I don't have anything to say.
What is your view on the current situation with experienced players 5-stacking ranked and casual, and what solution do you have in mind to mitigate or fix the situation?
Yeah. Well, the problem is that so the first thing that we're working on, right, is the ability to queue for ranked while playing casual, right? That is, you fuckers, and you know who you are, better be playing in the ranked mode so you can fight other good teams and not killing this game by murdering children, right? Like, obviously, yeah, please try to not do that. Please try to, like, if you're good, just use Discord and that kind of stuff to actually organize games, get into a ranked game, play something for real. Don't just blow it for all these new kids, right? Or at the very least, break up your team, right? Which sucks. Like, dude, I know that's not a viable ask, really. Like, just don't play with your friends, right? But on the other hand, it's like, you know, like, what can we do? You know, on the other hand, right? How do I put this? The simultaneous rank queuing is the first step in kind of organizing the community. And the analogy I use is, we got some Olympic swimmers, right? And they're splashing the kids in the kiddie pool. And so what we need to do is separate these two groups more effectively, such that, you know, like, Mazer should not ever be playing against new people, right?
Yeah.
But on the other hand, Mazer does need to matchmake against someone, right? And that's the problem. You know, fortunately, every sale is sort of an opportunity to have new players come in and kind of reset the approach. But honestly, we're just in concurrency hell. It's like, there's a point at which, if you make such a great imposition in matchmaking, that people just leave forever, right? They're like, dead game.
Mm-hmm.
And then there's also a point at which, if you don't make enough of an imposition, then the new kids, the younglings get they get swatted, right? They get slaughtered, and you lose them forever, right? And it's like, well, it's tough, you know. So I guess probably what we will do after, we'll see how the ranked simultaneous queuing works, right? Because the idea is like, okay, if you're a good player and you're queued for ranked like a good boy, and you're not just splashing the kids in the pool, right? Then at least a ranked game keeps you out of the matchmaking pool for a while, right? And then hopefully there's just enough ranked activity that's happening, because you don't have to choose one and the other anymore. You can just kind of queue for both, right?
Yeah.
Hopefully what that does is, anyone who's like worth their salt in this game and like is really signing up to play real due process, because it's not fun beating up children, right? Like, 4-0ing some kids in casual is like, what's the point? You know, like, maybe you're a vindictive asshole and you like doing that, right? But I think most people are like, well, I just want to have a good game, you know?
Yeah.
Whenever I play that stupid War Thunder game, I'm like, just please give me a good dogfight. I don't even care if I lose. I just want to fight someone who actually knows what they're doing, right? It's like, so I think that our first step is just giving people the way to get into that environment. And then the second step is to take more extreme measures if it continues to be a problem, and basically explain to people that, like, you just gotta deal with the longer queue times for the health of this game, you know? So we'll see.
So just to catch up on this, because that's a common topic that's coming up in regards to that. If I remember correctly, the simultaneous ranked queuing will also change the situation on how new players right now get queued up for ranked, even though they might not actually want to do that.
Yeah, that bug will go away.
Perfect. Okay, let's move on. No,
yeah,
go ahead.
Let's move on. That's fine.
Yeah. Okay. Let's move on to the single most asked question on Discord, like lifetime probably. Will leaning ever be implemented?
Ambidextrous shooting first, then leaning maybe. So, Vince and I are at odds on this. He likes that cover is sighted. Like, if you're a right-hand shooter, then if you're, playing a piece of cover from the correct side, then you'll present less of a target than the other side, right? Mm-hmm. I don't like that. I like being able to tuck into cover and play both sides, right? I don't know which is healthier. We'll see. I know that there are problems with leaning, which is, as I kind of commented earlier, right? There's this gulf between what can happen in reality, right, and what can happen in a video game, where if you impose the reality into a game, it feels sluggish, right? And if you don't impose enough reality into the game, then it's just stupid, right? And so what I'm talking about, of course, is lean spam in games like Siege, where, literally part of the game and people will configure their mouse to do different. Like they'll put lean on their mouse keys to accomplish this, right? Like part of that game is being extremely evasive and slippery and moving your head around, right? And while we don't have one-shot headshots in our game, if we added leaning and it was as spammable as Siege, right, which is spammable for a good reason, then it would kind of suck, right? Like you'd still be playing shoot the head, but now you have to hit a head that's wobbling around multiple times, right, and not just once. And then in addition to that, right, like what I'm saying with the, I think of all people, the streamer Dr. Disrespect articulates it quite well. He complains that certain games are inathletic in their controls, meaning that they're kind of sluggish and they don't respond because, when you're playing in a game, you're playing like a star athlete, right? You're not some bozo like me. So, like...
You're not a gamer.
Yeah, when you press E, right, to lean or whatever you pro kids have, you need to respond fast, right, as the player avatar to that command, and it needs to feel like you're agile, right? But on the other hand, right, like let's say it's a common, unfortunately, scenario where someone is playing with over 100 milliseconds of ping, right? It just, that head peeked you, had 100 millisecond advantage, and then took a shot. And basically what happens is someone just stuck their head out and like murdered you pretty much instantly, right? Which is very much the case in Siege, right? Even though they have an amazing concurrency, of course, and can match you locally in your region, right? It's still a problem, right? In our game, it's even more of a problem because we don't have nowhere near the player count of Siege, so everyone's playing in suboptimal conditions, and yeah. So on the other hand, ambidextrous shooting, hey, you're still a brick, right? You can't lean or whatever, right? But you can play both sides of a corner and not just have to step out into total doom in order to fight a left-handed peek, right? And so, yeah, it's also actually comparatively easy to do, I think, because it's just another pose that you put in for guns, right?
Yeah, should not be too hard.
So yeah, that's what I would like to do. It's still up for discussion, it's not, it's just kind of part of the gunplay track. Right now what we're working on is making guns feel like guns, like they have recoil and flop around and things, right? But once that's done, we'll talk about what's next. But I think ambi shooting just means that like the game will feel natural and you won't even really need leaning after it. Even though, like, it's like, oh yeah, someone could shoot you in the thigh, right? But why the fuck would they do that? Like, we don't have any leg meta like in Tarkov, right? It's not like... Does that, like, the lean itself isn't so terribly valuable, right? It's just the thing that we're trying to avoid is essentially hitbox displacement technique through lean, right? Because it's just not good,
Yeah. Can you think of any other game that implemented ambidextrous aiming?
Splinter Cell did. Another
Splinter
big
Cell,
influence
yeah.
of this game. Yeah. Sam Fisher could shoot both sides, and he had the FN 2000, right? Which is ambidextrous bullpup gun that has like it's got like a tube that ejected brass goes down to the front of the weapon. Anyway, I don't know any other game other than Splinter Cell, honestly. Counter-Strike, you can put the thing on the left or whatever that matters, right? You can just mirror your model.
It's just like you cannot do that in mid-game.
Honestly,
right?
that's the other thing I like about ambidextrous solution, or the ambidextrous solution, is it's like, well, it probably sucks to play a game and you're left-handed and the gun is on the... I'm sure you get used to it, right? Because it's like
every other game,
that much, right? But yeah, it must be probably be nice to be able to set like your dominant hand as your left, and you're still going to get all that gas in your face because we're not going to mirror the guns or anything for you. They're not going to become leftward ejecting or anything. So use at your own peril, but maybe you prefer that, you know. Yeah, so I know it's TBD. I just, you know, it's part of that athletic thing that I'm talking about, right? Like being able to jink and zag and all that kind of stuff. Like it's important to be able to vary your peaks and be somewhat competitive and not just feel like a giant prick walking through a door, right? Like that's the thing I hate most about our game is it's just like when you're in like those 1v1 situations, it's really hard to like feel like you can win the gunfight by being a better gunfighter. It's just mostly feels like it's somewhat preordained in terms of the amount of health you have left, right?
Mm-hmm. Okay. Let's go to a topic that's not directly about the game, but more related to it. What is your view on, or what is your view of how DPL is doing right now? Yeah.
I've got a DPL game right in front of me. I love what they're doing. I think they have really great energy and amazing production value. And we really don't deserve them. It's just, you know, my main problem is it's just like the viewership, right, is quite low. And I think the viewership being low is actually our fault as the developer, because as people, let's see if this one has it. Yes, okay. One Daniel Klinowicki comments on YouTube. I'm not sure if the devs realize that, but people don't want to look at a map the entire want some gameplay, not the map. The game won't be a popular esports discipline until they let casters spectate the game and not the map. Yes. So basically, there's just a bunch of things that we're actually working on right now that need to be done to make the DPL more viewable, right? Because what we want is obviously thousands of people watching these YouTube videos, right? And so I just kind of feel guilty about that because it's like a lot of things had to come before we could support them. And I believe I promised them like first person spectation, last summer or something, right? And we never came through, and it sucks, but that's kind of like the reality of, as I said, we are a small game studio, and just trying to do our best to prioritize what needs to get done, but yeah, I really, honestly, it just kind of gives me hope to see the game actually get played at a competitive level, like it makes the hard days not as hard,
Yeah. Okay. Do you have any suggestions on what they could change or improve?
Like I said, the improvements are on showing me crab to ship. Their hands are kind of tied,
Fair.
But one day I would like there to be, it's like how do I put this? If you watch like PUBG esports or whatever, it's like a total mess. Because how the fuck are you supposed to? How do you keep track of a 4-way engagement, right?
Yeah, hard. That's
and if you watch any one player's perspective, you're not really gonna understand what the hell is going on. Like, yeah, okay, this player's getting frags and that's cool, right? But you don't understand the disposition of the teams and that kind of stuff. I think that what we can do, like this is not happening anytime soon, but where I'd like to take this is you can have like a Brady Bunch screen where you have the map in one corner, and then maybe you have 2 player perspectives, and then in the fourth corner can be like the DPL, like stats or whatever you guys usually do for that kind of stuff, right? But like, if you guys could see the whole picture, like one team member's perspective, another team member's perspective, and then the map, I think that's like the platonic ideal, right? And then giving controls, of course, so that you can quickly switch between those, switch between players and that kind of stuff. That's all the stuff that we want to do, and I think it's going to make it really, really watchable. And so, like, I don't have any criticism for the DPL, like their format or anything or whatever they're doing. It's just I just wish I was able to do more sooner. That's all. I'm very grateful to them.
All right, sounds good. Where did you process originate from, and where did you get the name?
The name was just like, because it's kind of like Judge Dreddy, right, or RoboCop. The joke being that the due process is basically how do you kick down a door and kill people, and not like that there's any kind of law and order anymore. It's just that's the joke, right? Anyway, the game, as I said, was hey, when I was a kid, I played tactical shooters like SWAT 4 and Tom Clancy, like the Rainbow Six games, and like the real ones, not the third person. That I mean, those are cool in their own, like as Gears of War clones. Those are cool games, right? But they're not. It's not even close to what. Anyway, but the yeah, I played, I guess those two games in particular, right? SWAT 4, Raven Shield.
Mm-hmm.
Frustrated with their clunkiness, frustrated with, I guess the big rant is just high level game design, right? Like that is to say, stuff in, when I say high level, I don't mean like high quality. I mean like, what's the format? What's the setup, right? Like, because in the case of those games, right? Like because I was never a server admin or anything, I couldn't tell you if there was actually an attack defend mode. But like, it can't just be a meeting engagement in a building. That's absurd. Like that's not at all interesting. You've ruined the game with that high level non-decision, right? And yeah, that's where it came from. Is it's just like, why can't these people do the obvious thing and simply deliver on what is literally in the fucking book, right? Like, which I hadn't read at the time, but I did read it later on in life. And hey, it's multiple attack and defense scenarios, right? Like,
yeah,
never does Team Rainbow just walk into a hospital or something and start shooting other people at the other end of the hospital that happen to be walking toward them, right? That's not, just doesn't happen, it's not interesting. Like, so that's why the game exists, basically. Is I just got fed up and said, someone needs to make this game, and I bet no one is. And then Siege came out like right after, which I was really... And we were sweating. Like when we saw their planning phase thing in their E3 trailer, we were like, oh fuck, are you serious? We just throw it away, right? And lo and behold, there's no planning, so surprise. But yeah, that was some dark days early on. But I think kind of the reason why we kept going was we just kind of knew that, I mean, if anyone remembers that E3 trailer, it's sort of like, there's so many.
I mean, that trailer back then sold me, but that was before I knew how much, like how fake, I guess, how good Ubisoft is at making trailers that look like a really great game that are actually just cinematics.
Yeah, I think, I think that department should be very, honestly, like, how do I put it? I think a bullshit trailer like that is actually really, really valuable.
Yeah, I mean, it sold me on the game.
Yeah, it makes sales, so it puts money in the bank, right? But then it also gives the team making the game a very cohesive, concrete vision of this is what we're making, right? Mm-hmm. My only criticism is I think you should be realistic about the temperament of players, right? We don't look at someone who got blown up and go, are you okay? Like that no one does that. I also don't think you should make fake gunshots in your trailer where 1911 has like 12 rounds in it but fires 8 according to the UI. Like, there's just sort of like a basic like honesty thing, and I know why they did that, because it's like it looks lame if he doesn't shoot all the shots, right? But it's like, yeah, but the whole thing, it's lame because you architected this very elaborate scenario that doesn't actually play out in your game, right? And I just, that's my only criticism. It's just like, well, okay, make a trailer where it's like you can actually achieve that, and it's not, because it's like they were in alpha playing the game before that, right? Like, I don't know if people saw that Rogue 9 thing showing the Rainbow Six Siege alpha, right? Like their pre-alpha gameplay, or whatever the fuck, whatever even alpha means now, right? That game looked like ours. They had a fucking UAV. They literally had a UAV, like, you know, Predator drone. It wasn't Predator, it was some other thing, right? But orbiting the AO, and you could look through the camera, and it was like really cool. And it's like, oh, well, it seems very similar, huh? So yeah, I thought that's awesome. I just think that it's like, who knows why that decision got made? It doesn't really matter, right? I mean, they've got one of the best selling games of all time, so work for them. Yeah, I think you should pick a target that can be achieved by your trailer like that, because that's really cool to actually deliver on something that players think is sick, right? And they like, it can actually be achieved. You're not going to get, are you okay, right? You just show like tactical gameplay. They could have pulled like actual developers playing the game and just pulled their comms like we do in our trailers, right? And we're fine, you know, but whatever. What was the original question, by the way?
The original question was
I guess I wanted to
how do you, like, where did your process originate from?
Oh yeah, it was just, yeah, I guess I answered that, just out of frustration with, you know, these so-called tactical games that they didn't deliver on the tactics. Now, mind you, like playing SWAT 4 in co-op is very tactical, right?
Yeah.
My qualm was with the PvP.
Yeah.
Yeah, I guess my other qualm is it's like SWAT 4 and a lot of other tactical games like impose this radical clunkiness to everything that it makes me shiver. That's why I like the Dr. Disrespect rant on athleticism in games or whatever, is because it's like, yeah, no game should ever feel like, you know, play SWAT 4 and you're like, FOV blooms, like, or not your weapon indicator, your shots will bloom out to like 45 fucking degrees, right? Like, you've got like an MP5 in your hand, right? And you can't just shoot that thing straight with point fire. It doesn't make any sense, you know. Like, why make these decisions, you know? Like, just shit like that just pissed me off too. So
okay. All right. Let's go back to the future of the game. What's the plan to improve audio in the game? It's a very generic question, but that, I think I did not alter this one at all. So that was just...
So yeah, how do I put this? Personally, I was working on a system for audio, which is what the veteran players were hearing. And it had some bugs in it. And for that reason, the system was removed. And not when I was able to do anything about it. And yeah, that sucks. The answer is we were working on interim solutions to fix things from just a hierarchy of pain and ease of implementation. So like things like you will no longer have to snail strat and just walk to your entry point as the attackers, because the exterior walls will just block the footsteps, you know. They won't block all the gunfire or anything, but, you know, the disadvantage, of course, of that is like, if someone's about to peek that door, you really can't hear them until they've already peeked you. Then you'll hear a footstep, right? So that sucks. In the long term, we actually did an experiment trying out Steam audio, but it was not there yet. And the purpose of the Steam Audio was to create, to essentially supplant my system by creating a realistic reverb and occlusion system, right? Reverb being the echo of things inside a room, and occlusion being like, footsteps through a wall, you can barely hear them, right? We're going to have to build out a more robust solution that does that in game logic land and not through some cool audio tech intended for VR. I just don't think it's going to happen in any usable time frame. So it's just audio will get better in that the already with this improvement that's like it's been tested, it's basically ready for deployment, right? It improves, the rotation problem of just like you hear people walking to wherever to dock in factory, right? And you're like, they're dock, and everyone rotates, right? But then the other problem that it solves is like just if someone is shooting in this room, right, you'll be able to more reliably hear where they're at and that kind of stuff, right? So that will get better. It won't be as good as before, but we will inch by inch reclaim that goodness and get there eventually. So I think it's actually one of the most important game design problems of the game for the feedback that you get from good audio means that you are less surprised when things happen to you, right? So if you can hear footsteps approaching a doorway, right, someone's about to peek that door. That's kind of a big deal, obviously. So we will get there eventually. It's going to take a while,
Okay. Is there going to be more of an emphasis on verticality in later generated maps? We've seen this already with skylights and being able to be higher up on the map with the fan, but will we see any bigger extension of this?
I'm sorry, Pine, could you repeat that question?
Basically, they're asking for more verticality in level design or in level generation.
Yes, you will see.
Okay.
That's all I can really say right now. I guess the main problem is there's this chicken and the egg problem, right? Where it's like, well, we can't do any, like, all the verticality that we have in the game is, there's a verticality, right? But there's nothing underneath, right? Like, there's not multiple floors. There may be multiple levels, but it's all, you can't be underneath someone, right? That's because the map drawing problem. So we're working on a level that involves multiple floors so that we can create the problem that our UX team will have to solve, right?
That's how this works.
Because without the problem, why is it priority to do multi-level drawing if you don't have multiple levels, right?
Yeah.
So we're working on that map, but it's gonna be a while, like a long time before that hits, because UX team also has a lot of other shit to do. So it's just it's again just a question of priorities. It's just the hardest part is all of these things are obvious to do. It's we know what improvements need to be made, right? It's just what's the order in which we make them, because the pipe to make improvements is quite small, and the amount of shit you need to put in the pipe is quite large.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean that's the issue with having such a small team.
Yeah.
So
I mean, that is what it is, right?
Yeah.
I think the team's at a good place to make meaningful improvement to the game, right?
Mm-hmm.
That's good. It's not like we're like hampered by our numbers and we're working ineffectively because of them. We would benefit from a couple of positions filled, but it's not like, again, it's just more like a matter of time. This really is an early access game, right? It's not early access but it's actually done. It's early access and there's a strong vertical slice, and it's just gonna keep expanding horizontally very slowly until it is really, really good.
Sounds like a plan. Okay. Here's a question. I'm not sure if Red Commissar is still here, but there's a question he would probably be interested in the
He
answer.
probably left already. Like, this guy just talks way too much.
How do you envision the world of due process? In the future of development, are we going to see more of the world fleshed out? Any hints you can give us that would allow us to take a peek into the world that Alpha City resides in?
Yeah, I can't really say much about the world. I'll say two things. One is our intention is to reveal things piece by piece, right? And do so in a way that is quite subtle, right? Like it's kind of like what it's going to be like a frog in the proverbial pot of water that comes to a boil, right? Where it's like you kind of realize what's going on as time goes on and you piece all the things together, right? That said, is there like some mega lore file out there that exists that explains everything that's going on, like in extreme detail? No, it's because I hate that shit. Like there are so many quote game designers out there that are in fact just like design is not it's not a design discipline to do that. It is a world creation discipline, right? Like you can design a world, right? But design implies like a great deal of thought and intentionality. If you're just like saying, you know, the dragon has all the gold and blah blah blah, and this is why this happens, and the elves hate the dwarves or whatever, right? It's like, A, you're just ripping off Tolkien, right? But then B, it like how does this relate to the player at all, right?
Yeah.
So yeah, basically you'll just see as it comes along. I think our world has a lot already in it that are quite obviously like, what the fuck? So it's just going to be a lot more of that as time goes on, you know? Like you think about how surprised everyone was with the cyberpunk medic team that comes and they're armed, right? Like it's very much that same ethos, right? It's just it will reveal itself over time very gradually because frankly it's a multiplayer FPS and the lore is never going to be priority, right? But in every opportunity we have to tell something about this world, we will, you know. And what I mean by that is you know, like every environment is an opportunity to tell something about the world, right? Every level palette we choose is an opportunity to tell something about the world, right? So that's what we're doing, you know?
All right. I know Red Commissar really wants to know about rigid airships, but
yeah, read me the rigid airship thing.
Sure. So, what can you say on the use of rigid airships in Alpha City? Given the state of the water, most ports are either drained or flooded, and the need to transport heavy cargo across long distances, rigid airships would provide the optimal vessel to perform this task. Given these facts, how much are rigid airships used in Alpha City? Are there hydrogen, helium, or some other lighter than air gas used to lift the ships? Would there be likely targets for the crims? What companies built them? How many health and safety codes do they violate? It's a great question.
Ships still exist in due process. They are not airships. However, there is a specific airship over Afghanistan that is quite interesting to me. So that's all I'll say.
Okay. I mean, that's a good sneak peek.
There's one floating over Kabul right now, probably.
Uh-huh. All right. One more technical question, and then we go through a few more lighthearted questions to finish it up. I would say, will there ever be an FOV slider?
Yes. Sorry. Next question.
Is there like my question to that, or follow-up question would be like, what are your thoughts about like competitive players just like putting it in an extreme position to have an advantage? Like you mentioned earlier that you would like
it's
crank
like,
down the FOV on when
I
your
know.
ships to
We're
44.
not gonna let you get like, I don't know, like 180 FOV, right? So it's like those Quake players that do the, I don't know what you call that, but like Quake players will basically map something like 300 degrees of FOV to a screen, and you can basically see behind you, right? It's like, okay, we're not going to do that, right?
Mm-hmm.
We'll try to provide an FOV that works for those mega ultra wide guys, right? And we will, you know, how do I, it's like on one hand, yeah, I'm sorry we don't have this totally simple feature that every other game has, right? But on the other hand, it will take us a few days to do. And is it really so important? You know, like I feel bad for anyone who gets sick because the FOV is too narrow or something, right? We will look into the problem. It's just, yeah, and you won't be able to turn down your FOV to be 44.
I mean, I don't think that would be. Well, I guess it makes things
awesome.
bigger, but
you would have the DL44 like Han Solo's blaster, and you turn it down to 44. I think that was actually intentional.
Okay.
Like, why is it 44 instead of 45? Was it a rounding error? Like, what happened?
Okay. What is your favorite type of crab?
I think those coconut crabs are pretty scary. So,
Are you an aimer or a brainer?
well, I guess brainer means, right, do you actually come up with any strats, right? So
I guess.
I'm a brainer because why the fuck would I make this game if I wasn't?
Fair point.
The criticism I usually encounter with my strats is they are somewhat predictable. So I need to work on that. And then in terms of aim, well, I'm an aimer insofar as I understand the value of setting your sensitivity correctly and using consistent sensitivity across any game you're playing, right? Including really fucking bastard ones that, like, you have to go into the INI file and dial in a specific amount because the slider doesn't work and it doesn't let you key it in and all that shit, right? So I go at great lengths to be an aimer, but my aim kind of is not, it's not great. Like, it's not that I'm bad. Like, I can get headshots, I can play Tarkov, right? Like, I'm not a total boomer, right? But you know, on the other hand, like, I don't play, say, Modern Warfare primarily because the twitch reflex demand is greater than what I'm willing to put up with, right? So it's like, it's probably why I don't play Apex that much either, is it's just like, I like aiming, but I don't like it that much, you know?
Yeah, I feel you.
But yeah, on the other hand, I know some people out there who insist on playing on televisions with a fuck ton of input lag, right? Or at ridiculous resolutions that are of no value, right? And I hate that. So it's like, yeah, I'm an aimer in that I will do the practice and I recognize the value of doing such things as aim training, but I suck. So that's all I'll say.
Okay.
I'm one of those guys that has to, like, really work on crosshair placement to secure headshots because I can't. I can flick, but I can't track. I can't track worth the fucking damn. Like, it's awful. That's why I don't play, like, Overwatch that much. Like, I have to play McCree or something because I have to just flick each shot, you know. So, what is next?
Will you uphold your promise of wearing the crab hat? I believe that was when we sell 1 million copies or something like that.
I will wear a crab hat at 1 million copies for sure, of course.
All right.
If that's what it takes, totally. And I will not. I know better than to defy fate by not wearing the crab hat. Like, that level of hubris, the gods will certainly punish. So, but we sell 1 million copies, I will wear a crab hat, and you guys can have the Discord emote or whatever for all time.
Nice. I like the next question, but I think most people will not understand where it's coming from or what it even asks for. Why can't we play Super Space Blank on the arcade cabinets in game?
All I will say is that maybe DigiPen should release the IP to that game.
I see. How many more 56k marts must be destroyed before the crims are sated?
That's a good question.
Like, why are they even just like bombing a?
Why is it the game where the bad guys blow up gas stations, as General Sam put it? So,
that was a good video.
All I can say is that the 56k mart knows what it did. Okay.
That's a very cyberpunk thing to say.
Revealed, yeah.
Okay, cool. That's it. That's it from me, or
Cool.
from the questions,
Well,
I guess.
hope you and the viewers, whoever they are, enjoyed this, and thank you for indulging my very long rants. But I figure it would be good to hear from me at least once, so here I am. And
Perfect.
yeah, like I said, I am very, very happy to entertain suggestions and that kind of stuff. Like, I do want to hear them. It's just, honestly, the more input like that, the merrier. It's just don't expect me to be able to implement very much of it, So
Fair.
but yeah, I like hearing from you guys. Generally, I'm not on Discord that much in terms of reading the feed because I just don't like feeds. But some people write me very nice, cogent documents that I will read. So if you make an effort to reach out to me, I will make an effort to get back to you. So that's all I will say.
Awesome. Okay, let's wrap it up.
Cool.
About, I guess, okay, so yeah, let's announce that not announce, but remind you that we have one more regular stream coming up this week. That will be tomorrow, the dev team practice at 5:30, if I'm not mistaken. And then we'll be back with our regular schedule next week. This was Community Hours today with our special guest, Alexander Baard, our creative director. And I'm TH Pine, your community manager. And I really need to go to bed now, so I hope you all have a great day.
Thanks for staying up. Take care.
It was totally worth it, so I regret nothing. And thanks for the viewers in chat being active and having fun. And the VOD will be available. I'll probably take the effort to timestamp it as well, and then we'll publish it on Discord, or
Cool.
Publish on YouTube, but announce it on Discord. So if you missed something specific, all right, then see you next time.
All right, take care. Thanks again. Bye-bye.
I'm receiving at 39. I'm receiving at 39. I'm receiving at 39. I'm receiving at 39.
75 Frank.
This 6-1, I'm receiving at 39.